Story 1. Discovered wife's 15-year affair with her best friend when text popped up on our smart TV. I confronted her, told our kids, and filed for divorce. I, 45M, have been married to Amy, 45F, for the last 15 years. I'm an executive at a company, whereas my wife is a homemaker. She used to work at a plant nursery in her 20s, but after our marriage, she chose to be a homemaker. We have 2 daughters, Emma, 13F, and Ella, 11F. Ours was a happy family until the truth of my wife's adultery was exposed thanks to the smart TV. Okay, so last week it was our friend John's birthday. He has settled in a different country for the last few years. We video called him at midnight to wish him. After wishing him, all 4 of us, me and my wife along with John and his wife, were caught up in small talks about work and life. He didn't have any other plans for the birthday night, so we decided to hang out virtually and relax for a while. His wife suggested that we can Chromecast the WhatsApp video call through the TV. In that way, we can sit back, relax, and have some good time together. My friend's wife and Amy are also good friends, and we used to hang out a lot when they were in the city. Anyway, Amy connected her phone to the TV since the TV remote app was already installed and active on her phone. We grabbed some beers and snacks and enjoyed the virtual celebration. After a while, Amy felt dizzy and dozed off on the couch while John and I kept chatting. His wife was also asleep. About 15 to 20 minutes into it, the call got disconnected due to internet fluctuations, and my wife's WhatsApp screen popped up on the TV. I was just about to call back John when I noticed some 10+ unread messages from someone named Lifeline with a heart. I was a bit surprised because it was not me. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the profile picture and found that it was her childhood friend, Matt. I've met him like a zillion times after my marriage because my wife was close to him. They were neighbors and school friends. She once told me that everyone around them in the neighborhood as well as in the school thought that they were either dating or would eventually date each other. However, that never happened. According to my wife, she didn't see him as a romantic partner. Besides, Matt was not interested in women. As of the current status, Matt was single. I wasn't that troubled seeing my wife's lifeline because she told me that he wasn't interested in women. However, just then another message popped up from that chat head. "Baby, I miss you," triggered me to dig into the matter. I hesitantly opened Matt's chat conversation. I found that my wife was chatting with him all this while through her phone when we were connected on the VC. Sadly for him, she unexpectedly dozed off without giving him a goodnight kiss, and that's why he was blowing up her WhatsApp after he got the blue tick on his messages. His messages came to like, "Why ain't you replying? Is everything okay? I can't sleep without your goodnight kiss. I can't get over after today's session. Gee, you were so good today. This cannot be a conversation between good friends." By then, I was certain that their relationship was beyond friendship. I scrolled up the chat to find that they sexted almost every night. OMG, what murky conversations they had while my wife slept peacefully on the couch. I went through all the filth she had with her lover friend. The chats had occasional flashes of X-rated photos and nudes in between, which gave shivers down my spine. I was numb, yet I wanted to know everything which happened between them. I didn't know how to take screenshots of these conversations on the TV, so I used my phone to click the pictures of the TV screen. After taking 4 to 5 pictures, I was done. I didn't care about gathering the evidence. I wanted to know how and why. I wanted to yell, howl, and leash out my frustration, yet I didn't know how to confront her. It was 2 a.m., and I was already down with countless beers combined with a few shots of scotch. I barely had any energy to move or even think. I just kept scrolling through the chat, seeing my failed marriage in front of me on the big screen. Everything looked baseless at that point. She shared every minute detail with her lover, even the details of our intimate moments. In fact, after every private moment between us, she used to repeat the same with him in order to compensate for his feelings. I felt disgusted. I wanted to know when all of this started, hence I kept scrolling, but it looked like a never-ending sea which got deeper even after reaching the deepest corner. By then, Matt's messages had stopped coming, and there was a dead silence in the house. I felt haunted. I grabbed a cushion lying beside me just to ensure that I wasn't dreaming or hallucinating. I was still scrolling mindlessly when Amy suddenly woke up from her slumber. Her sleepy head suddenly got hyperactivated on seeing her dual life displayed on the TV screen. She immediately snatched the remote from my hand and switched off the TV. She then pounced on her phone and disconnected it from the TV. I just kept staring at her, dumbfounded. I saw her opening her WhatsApp chat, glancing through her lover's chat, and then closing the app with a huge sigh. That long breath was a sign of surrender. She understood that I knew everything. She held my face with her hands and came closer to me, saying, "Baby, I can explain. Please listen to me." I stared back at her and replied, "Sure. Please explain." She was astonished at my response. She was expecting that I would hyperreact and won't listen to her. I would have done the same if it was 2:30 p.m. instead of 2:30 a.m. I was almost passing out, partly because of the alcohol and mostly because of the unraveling truth. I repeated, "Damn it, explain." She was at a loss for words. She murmured, "Actually, well," I said, "You know what? Don't try. You know you're screwed." Saying this, I limped my way to the bedroom. She followed me. I turned towards her and asked her to stay out while slamming the door in her face. I heard her knock a few times, but I passed out soon after. The next morning, I woke up heavy-headed and almost forgetful of what happened last night. I went out of my room to fetch a bottle of water. My throat was dry. Seeing me coming out of the room, she rushed towards me, and with that sight, all the harrowing memories of last night came rushing too. She tried to hug me, but I asked her to back off. She retreated with teary eyes and a puppy face. She told me that I misunderstood. I ignored her and went towards the refrigerator to fetch a water bottle. She kept nagging at me that I was just overreacting and he was just a friend. They never had any physical relationship. It was only on chats. It was just a healthy flirt. I wasn't ready for a confrontation yet, but her lame excuses agitated me, and I screamed louder, "Really? Who the earth sends nudes to male friends? And what does that sexting mean? Wasn't he supposed to be uninterested in women? Then how the hell did he find interest in your private parts?" It was a Saturday morning, and gladly my children weren't at home. They were with my parents for that week to enjoy their summer vacation. I stared at her, asking her for an explanation. My mental state was running pathetic. I wanted to get to the core of the situation despite knowing that it would crumble me to pieces. I wanted her to confess every detail of her crime, yet I felt like throwing up whenever she opened her mouth. I grinded my teeth, asking her to speak, but then shut her up when she spoke. I DK what I was doing. I know I acted unreasonably, but how else would someone react after knowing that he was being cheated for the last 15 years and his entire married life has been a sham? I gulped the entire bottle of water at one go and then asked her to confess everything from the start, or else I'll thrash that dual-face lover black and blue. This time, instead of covering up or pleading, she revealed the truth. She confessed that she and Matt were always lovers. They got into a physical relationship in high school, and since then, they continued with it. However, Matt was a lazy bum and made it straight to Amy that he can't afford to provide for her. To give a little context about Matt, he's a school dropout who has never earned a penny on his own. His parents had acquired a few decent properties in the suburbs whose rental yield is keeping his expenses afloat. However, that is not sufficient to pay for two people. I met his parents a couple of times during my visit to Amy's house. They were concerned about Matt's laziness and requested Amy to advise him on taking up a job or starting a business. Everyone except Matt was bothered about his future. Anyways, back to the track. Amy confessed that she did break ties with Matt many a time due to his commitment issues. However, he was always successful in winning her back. Apparently, Matt never had any issues with Amy dating other men, although he never dated anyone but Amy. She had a couple of boyfriends before we started dating, so this sounded true to me, although amazing. What kind of lover does that? I know, maybe a lazy one. I asked her that if they that close, why didn't she marry him? She said that Matt would have never been able to provide a good lifestyle to her. Besides, Amy too never had a stable job, nor was even aspirational about her career that she could be the breadwinner of the house. So she chose to be a freeloader and lead a dual life. I asked her one last question, if the girls were mine or of Matt. She swore that they were mine. I wasn't convinced and still doubted her. She offered to get a DNA test done if I wasn't convinced. She said that she couldn't risk having the children with Matt because she was scared that if her truth was uncovered and I abandoned the children, she was sure that Matt wouldn't be able to raise them even if he wanted to. I don't know if I should be relieved to know that at least the children were mine. I asked her to leave the house, or else I would reveal her truth to everyone, even to the girls. They might be young but smart enough to grasp the truth. She begged me not to disclose this to our daughters, saying that they would hate her and disrespect her. I refilled the bottle of water, grabbed a few beer bottles, and went inside my room and locked it. I sat in front of my laptop and stared at the screen for more than an hour. I didn't know what to do next or whom should I talk to. The truth was killing me from inside. I felt suffocated. After emptying the bottles of beer, I went out of my room, grabbed my car keys, and drove to my in-laws' place, which was 30 minutes away. My Amiel answered the doorbell with a pleasant smile, but seeing my red face, she knew something was wrong. She called my FIL, who rushed from their bedroom and sat me down. I was sweating and palpitating with anxiety. I told them that I don't know any better way of confronting this. While narrating everything, my throat got dry, and my body temperature soared high as I revealed the ugly truth. Midway through this, we heard someone banging on the door. It was Amy. She stormed into the house and asked me to leave immediately. She said that this was our private matter and that we should deal with it and not involve her parents. The next few hours were a series of emotional rage and turmoil. I rebuked her for cheating on me for 15 years, while she brushed it off as a mere casual relationship which meant nothing to her. Gradually, she shifted the blame on me for manipulating her parents against her, and I defended myself. My in-laws sided with me and berated her. I spent the entire weekend drinking, passing out in between, and refilling my stomach with alcohol. The next day was Monday. I went to work feeling groggy and exhausted. At the office, I Googled some divorce lawyers and booked an appointment with one. I came back home to find some of her belongings missing. I guess she came home when I was away, packed some of her stuff, and left. I didn't bother to check on her. She messaged me stating that she would be staying at a hotel to give me some time to cool off. Seriously? Did she think the matter was so trivial that I could simply move on? She also sent me messages pleading for forgiveness and making promises about ending her relationship with her lover. It's been a week since that fateful day. Today is Friday again. The week moved too slowly for me. I guess the weekend would be slower. I have an appointment with the lawyer this Monday. I've been reading many Reddit stories to find a solution for my problem, but I guess mine is a complicated case. More than myself, I'm worried about my girls. How do I deal with them? How to confront them? Should I even confront them at all? Update. Thanks folks for the sound advice. Apologies for not updating you guys. However, I did connect with some of you over PM and comments. I know it's been 6 months since my first post, and let me tell you, it was no less than a bumpy ride. I met the lawyer on that Monday and shared my concerns regarding my daughters. The lawyer advised me to confront the children subtly about the separation and not delve into the details as they might get into mental trauma. He also said that since my wife is jobless and seeing the nature of her affair, I have a good chance of getting custody. On the same day, my parents called Amy to pick up the kids from their house. They were still unaware of the situation. She came home with the kids when I was lying drained on the couch after the stressful meeting with the lawyer. I avoided having any conversation in front of the children and was put up in my room. When she came inside the bedroom, I told her to confront the girls about her adultery. She started sobbing and begged me for forgiveness. She kept saying that the girls would hate her for this. I guess they should. She deserves to be hated. What else do you expect after cheating on your family for 15 years? The lawyer said that it would take a week or so to send the divorce papers to Amy, so I had a week to straighten out things with the children as well as with my parents. I told her that I'm divorcing her. She reacted as if this was something out of the blue. She said that the children would be traumatized by the divorce. I wonder where her motherly feelings were buried all these years. I asserted that my decision is final and gave her the ultimatum of a week to confront the girls in whichever way she liked, or else I would tell them the truth. I grabbed my pillows and dozed off on the bedroom couch. That entire week, I left the house early in the morning and came late in the evening. As the weekend approached, she wailed and cried throughout the night, sometimes so hard that I would wake up. I did feel pity for her, but how could she do this for so many years? What was she thinking that she would never be caught? She would have got multiple opportunities to cut off her lover, yet she continued with him. Our private conversations, my insecurities, my deep dark secrets, everything she left open in front of her lover. How could I forget all of those? On Friday evening, she told me that she had planned a way out to confront the girls. The next day, I nodded. On Saturday, after our breakfast, she told the children that we have some news for them. She said that I have got a transfer to a different country, hence I would be moving out for a few years. I was dumbfounded while my daughter stared at me. I asked her sarcastically in front of the girls, "Does this mean that I need to move out of the house? Right?" She rolled her eyes, sighing me to shut up. She said, "Well, in that case, if the house is too big for 3 of us, we can shift to my parents' house, and later we can find a smaller place." The girls were perplexed at this. They were young but not stupid to not understand the game she was trying to play. My younger daughter told Amy that whatever she is saying is not making sense, while the elder one questioned us on point blank, "Are you guys getting divorced?" I gave a stern look at Amy and urged her to speak the truth. She sighed and broke down. The girls looked at me for the answers. I told them that they were right about our divorce. I explained to them that we don't feel compatible with each other anymore. My elder daughter asserted that I might be having an affair, and that's the reason Amy was crying. She held her mother's hand and asked her if I was cheating on Amy. Instead of clearing the air, Amy just hugged her in anticipation. The girls gave me a disgusted look. I lost my mind at that manipulative woman. I was stunned to see how she turned the table around me. I told my daughters everything, how I found out and what their mother was up to, of course filtering out the A+ content. Amy yelled at me for backing out on my words. She told me that I gave her the liberty of giving any explanation to the girls, then why I didn't support her when she was telling them about my transfer. The situation was out of control, and I decided to put my foot down at Amy's manipulation. I called up my parents and my in-laws and asked them to come down ASAP. Both of them lived 25 to 30 minutes away, and within an hour, all 4 of them were at my house. That 1 hour was a nightmare for me which I'll never forget in my life. My daughters were crying while hugging me, and seeing this, Amy tried her best to reason out her actions. She even went as far as portraying me as a liar and manipulating the girls against me. She stopped only when I told her I had photos of those conversations. My parents were shocked to see us in that condition. I narrated the incident in brief. Everyone despised Amy for such a heinous act. She kept sobbing and pleaded for forgiveness. For a moment, I felt pity for her. It hurts me too to see her in this condition, but she has bought this on herself. Instead of portraying me as the villain in front of my daughters, she could have just told them we felt out of love or something, but she wasn't ready to own the slightest of blame on her, and now her ugly truth lies naked in front of everyone, including her daughters. I made it clear that we are proceeding with the divorce and the girls would be with me. I asked her parents to take her away. Even the girls asked her to leave. My parents decided to stay back for a few weeks and take care of us. It was indeed a tough time for us, but glad we came out strong. I am enrolled in therapy for all 3 of us, and we are in a much better mental space now. My divorce proceedings are going on. Amy has claimed a share in my house, which I'm contesting because she doesn't deserve a penny. Surprisingly, she didn't contest the custody of the children, making it easy and evident for us to understand her priorities. During the confrontation and even after that, Amy promised to cut off all ties with her lover. However, after she moved in with her parents, she was caught visiting her lover's house. Her siblings caught her and humiliated her to the extent that she had to eventually leave the house. Her parents humiliated Matt for his actions and informed his parents as well. The last I know is that his parents have cut off all property rents which Matt was getting and asked him to make a living of his own, while Amy is working as a sales agent in a showroom. I don't think about her anymore. I'm focusing on raising my daughter and providing them the best of everything I can. Wish me luck. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Golden Child's sister got kicked out by her husband for cheating, so our parents convinced me to let her move in, but then she started flirting with my husband. Hey, so there's a lot of context here, so I'll start with that first. I, 25 female, have a twin sister, Becky. She and I were close growing up, but something just went very wrong when she was a teenager. Becky was an exceptionally bright student, while I was quite average. So, in 8th grade, she was offered a scholarship opportunity from a really reputed institution for gifted kids like her, and she wanted to accept. The only problem was that the high school that she was supposed to be attending was way out of town, and the commute itself would take up more than an hour every day. We could have let her live on campus, but Becky wasn't fine with it because she said she didn't like the idea of living on campus. So, after a lot of deliberation, my parents decided that she could live with our aunt, my father's sister. My aunt didn't have any kids of her own and had never married, so my father had been a little wary of sending Becky to live with her, since he wasn't sure if she would be able to handle the responsibility. But my aunt herself had volunteered to take Becky in and let her live with her, so she could attend the school that she wanted to and wouldn't jeopardize her future. And that's how Becky ended up living with my aunt for high school, while I continued to live with my parents. She would come back for the holidays, and we would all visit her whenever we had the time. For the first couple of months, everything was going fine, and she would tell us that she was having the time of her life at her new school since everybody was like-minded and she was finally being challenged. I was really happy for her because I wanted her to succeed. I had never been one of the typically jealous kids. I just wanted everyone to be happy, and I guess that still remained the same. So, initially, when she would tell me about her school and her new friends, I would be happy for her, and she wouldn't make a big deal out of it either. She would just mention it casually in conversation. But over time, that started to change, and it felt like she was trying to rub it in my face and make me feel bad about it. For a while, I thought that I was just reading too much into it, but then there were a lot of other negative changes in her behavior as well, which my parents also picked up on gradually, and that made me think that maybe I wasn't reading enough into this and something was going really wrong with Becky. This wasn't instantly noticeable, and it took a lot of time for us to actually come to terms with the fact that Becky was becoming much more different and kind of worse as a person. It started off small, like whenever we would visit her. She wouldn't talk as much as she used to and always seemed to have an attitude, but we brushed it off thinking that she was probably just stressed and tired from school and needed time to herself. My aunt also said the same thing, and we were satisfied with that explanation. But then more time passed, and then she would get snappy and cranky at us for absolutely no reason. My parents were also told that her grades were slipping and she was becoming quite troublesome to have in class. That was in her junior year, and that's the point around which my parents really started to get worried. They had been talking about bringing her back home for quite some time, but she was straight up refusing to come back because she wanted to be amongst people like her and didn't think that she would ever fit into the high school that I went to, which was quite an insult for me if I'm being honest. Anyway, the final straw was when my parents were contacted in the middle of the night by my aunt, and she claimed that Becky had stolen a bunch of cash and disappeared. There was a police search, and she was found just half an hour after the phone call trying to purchase drinks even though she was underage. She was let off with a warning, but my parents decided that they had enough, and it was time to bring her home. Becky was very unhappy about it and made sure that she put up a really good fight and was even more rebellious than she had been before. She protested a lot, but my parents had enough, and they forced her to come back with us and start attending the same high school that I used to go to. They also pushed her into therapy because clearly something had gone wrong while she had been living with my aunt. At first, we had honestly assumed that she hadn't been able to compete with the kids at her school and had finally snapped and broken down because when she came back, she was really difficult to deal with. She refused to cooperate with anyone, be it our parents or the teachers at our school. She would be nasty to our classmates and would constantly skip class, and even though I couldn't prove it to my parents, I had seen her smoking a little distance away from the school building several times. She had turned into the complete opposite of what she used to be, and it had been a slow but drastic change. So, of course, my parents thought that therapy would be the best way to go forward, so we could at least get to the bottom of what really had gone wrong while she was living with my aunt. We had expected the problem to be the school or bullying, but unfortunately, it turned out to be my aunt herself. So, apparently my aunt was what one could refer to as a helicopter parent. While in therapy, Becky was able to open up, and she had claimed that our aunt was really overbearing and simply too controlling. She would pretend to be normal whenever we came around to visit her, but the second that we left, she would turn back into her usual self and try to control every single aspect of her life. She said that she was forced to study every single second that she was at home because everything else was apparently just a waste of time. She was not allowed to go out with her friends or do anything apart from studying while she was at home. Even when she would have lunch or dinner, my aunt insisted on playing something educational instead of letting her watch something fun. It was really frustrating for her, so she started to act out in other ways, but she wasn't willing to go back to us either because that would mean giving up on the opportunity of a lifetime, and she didn't want to go to a normal public school because that would mean demeaning her own capabilities. Our aunt had told her several times that apparently our grandparents had never recognized her talent or intellect, even though she had also been a gifted child, and because her parents had never recognized that she was special and different, they never treated her differently either, and she ended up with a boring job that didn't even pay enough. She claimed that she could have been doing so much better if her parents had actually bothered to put in the time and effort to do something about how intelligent she was and invested in her. She had drilled the fear of failure into Becky and made her very paranoid, which is why she had refused to come back home with us the first time around. She believed that if she gave up on this school, it would spell nothing but failure for her in the future, and so she tried to keep up. But the pressure was just getting to her, so she started thinking about drinking and sneaking off to go out with her friends to let off some steam, but she got caught in the process and now she was back here with us. She said that she regretted everything because she had let go of a brilliant opportunity to actually make something of herself, and now she knew that she was doomed to failure, so she didn't even see the point of trying to do better anymore and had completely given up on herself. It was clear to us after that our aunt had really done a number on her and how. But the worst part was when a couple of years passed with minimal improvement in her behavior, and Becky was then diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. I couldn't say that I was surprised, but it was heartbreaking to know that our aunt had actually led to her developing such a serious disorder that was going to affect her for the rest of her life. Our parents were obviously devastated because they blamed themselves for even allowing our aunt to take over and letting Becky stay with her. However, I didn't think it was completely their fault because they had noticed all the signs and tried to get Becky back home, but she was the one who had refused, and also our aunt pretended to be really normal and was good at it whenever we were around, so there was no way that we could have found out unless Becky herself told us about it. They even filed a lawsuit against her to try and get her to pay us for the damage that she had caused and actually won. All that money went into Becky's treatment because she needed intensive therapy for several years. She managed to graduate from high school with difficulty but couldn't go to college because she was not in the correct condition, and my parents didn't want to risk anything by sending her away again. She refused to attend community college, so she continued to live with our parents until a few years ago. She started dating this guy called Toby, who moved in next door by himself after our old neighbor sold their house and moved away. He knew everything about her because our parents felt like it was their duty to tell him when they noticed that Becky was growing closer to him and often found her making excuses to speak to him. He was actually a really kind and compassionate person who genuinely seemed to like her. He didn't even care about her diagnosis and reassured my parents that he really liked her and wanted to go out with her in spite of everything that he had been told. My parents weren't exactly on board with it, but Becky convinced them to let her move in with him after they had been dating for a couple of months. It certainly helped that he lived next door, and my parents could always just pop in to make sure that she was doing all right, so they agreed after a while because it was getting really difficult to justify keeping a full-grown adult woman under their constant supervision. Becky ended up moving in with Toby, and my parents continued to try and make sure she wasn't doing anything to jeopardize her future and her relationship. They had also found her a job in a friend's startup company as a receptionist around the same time because she was apparently getting sick of being stuck at home. They found her the receptionist job so that it could be something low pressure for her to start with, and she could eventually work her way up. And everything was going great for her. After almost a year of living together, they decided to get married, and since they were already living together, my parents agreed because they thought that this would do a lot of good for her. She even quit her job to be a full-time stay-at-home wife, and honestly speaking, being with Toby had actually brought about a lot of positive changes in her life, and she was even behaving better with all of us instead of constantly treating us like the enemy and acting like she could do so much better if we didn't exist to bring her down. So, they thought that it was a good idea and she got married 2 years ago. I only just got married last year to my boyfriend, whom I've been with for almost 7 years. We met in our first year of college and have been inseparable since then. My husband, Jack, has always known about Becky ever since I brought him home to meet my family for the first time, and Becky started flirting with him like nobody's business. I told him about Becky's diagnosis and said that she might act a little strange, but I didn't expect her to start flirting with him right in front of me. It was really inappropriate, and I had to ask her to stop multiple times before my mother finally snapped at her and told her to go back to her room. It was really awkward afterward, and we had to explain to him that this was just how she was, and there was no telling what she might say or do because she literally had no filter. She would oftentimes say things to work us on purpose, and trying to flirt with my boyfriend would definitely get it done. But that was their first interaction, and after that, Jack would just ignore her, and she got bored after the first few attempts when she tried to flirt with him, but it wasn't reciprocated and started ignoring him back. So, they never really got along, and neither did I think it was necessary for them to do so either, and left the situation alone. But she had been invited to my wedding, as I had been invited to hers, since my parents wanted us to at least pretend to be a happy family even if we weren't one. She was totally smitten by Toby, and once they were together, she had started being nice to everybody, so I didn't think that there was any harm in finally being a family again. We started off well with monthly family dinners and were really trying our best to mend our relationships and be a little less dysfunctional, and it was really working because we had made a lot of progress in the past couple of years, and I guess one could actually refer to us as a happy family now. But I guess it was too good to be true because we recently found out that Becky had been cheating on Toby for the past year or so. We were all really shocked to find out about it because we had always assumed that Toby and Becky were as in love as could be, and yet she went ahead and had an affair with one of his coworkers, no less. It was a huge scandal for the family, and Toby filed for divorce as soon as he found out. He'd found out about it by chance because Becky had left her phone unlocked around him and left the room, and unfortunately, that's when her affair partner decided to drop a text. It was almost as if he wasn't even trying to hide it by that point. I guess she got lazy because she had been cheating on him for over a year and getting away with it, which is probably why she slipped up. Either way, there was no talking him into taking her back, and I don't exactly blame the guy because who would take her back after what she did? After quite a lengthy divorce process, it was decided that they would sell all their property, and that included the house. So, Toby sold the house and split the money between the two of them. Becky lived with our parents for some time after the divorce, but my parents kept telling me to let her live with me instead because she complained that my parents being around made her feel like a total loser who was still living with her mom and dad after a failed marriage. She could just rent an apartment and live on her own, but apparently my parents didn't want that because they thought that she might hurt herself or do something stupid if she was left to her own devices. My parents were practically begging me to take her in so she could rebrand her life. After a while, I didn't see the point of declining it over and over again, so I ended up agreeing to it and took her in. I honestly felt bad for her because every time I would visit my parents' house after the divorce, she would just be lurking in the shadows like a ghost of her past self, and it was pretty pathetic to see. I don't think anybody in my place could have continued to ignore it, and at the end of the day, she was my sister and I owed my family certain things, or at least that's what I believed before I took her in and she decided to stab me in the back anyway. A while after the divorce, I decided to speak to my husband about this. We had quite a few discussions regarding Becky and the living arrangement that my parents had been suggesting, and we decided that we were okay with it because if it was going to help with self-esteem and make her a better person somehow, then I was all for it. So, we took her in a couple of days ago, and she managed to screw it up in less than a week. She was quite happy to move in with us, and I could tell that my parents had been right. She really did want to live with me instead of them. It was kind of strange because she and I had grown apart in the years after she went away to live with our aunt. It was nice to see that she was finally reconnecting with me, and I even thought that we could really rebuild our relationship again. I was wrong, obviously, and I never should have taken her in. I only did it as a favor to my parents and a little bit to her because we all knew that she was in over her own head, and I wanted to do something to fix the family. Call it my savior complex, but I just wanted to be helpful. The day that she moved in was actually pretty nice. We let her stay in the guest room, and she really made herself at home there. She was chirpy and lively that day, and this was the first time that I had seen her this happy ever since the divorce took place, so I for one was really happy that I was being of help. However, things started changing as soon as we had spent one day in our house. The very next day, She started picking apart stupid things like how I decorated my house and the kind of paint that I used for the walls. It was ridiculous, but I didn't say anything about it because it seemed too petty to make an issue out of. The last straw was when at dinner, she decided to start flirting with my husband. I'm not even kidding. It was like full-on flirting, and she didn't even seem to care that I was sitting right there. She kept asking him weird questions and making googly eyes at him throughout dinner, and I could tell that he was really uncomfortable, as was I. On more than one occasion, she brushed her hand against his on purpose when there was really no need to. I was actually speechless, and my husband and I left the dinner table as soon as we could without even bothering to finish our dinner. We went to our room for a bit and immediately decided that she had to go because there was no way that I was letting Becky live under my roof and flirt with my husband. It was just not going to happen, and she would just have to go back to living with our parents. If that affected her mental health, then tough, but that's not my problem because she's not my daughter. I tried to do something nice for the family by taking in a nutcase like her, but obviously, there is no fixing people like this because they're always just going to be ungrateful. I should have known that, but I guess the human part of me really did feel bad for her and wanted to make her feel better because she is my sister. After we were done with dinner and our conversation, I called my parents and told them what had happened. I expected them to be just as outraged as I was and demand that I send her back immediately. A third move back to her parents' place would just be devastating for her, and she would go back to moping and sulking all the time. They didn't want that for her and told me that I could either just deal with it or I could let her have this house and move somewhere else. I didn't even know what they meant by, let her have this house, because that's not how things work. You can't just let people have things that don't belong to them, and that applies to both husbands and houses. Anyway, I told my parents that they were being ridiculous and they had to take her back in, but my parents said that I was overreacting and that it was apparently no big deal because as long as I trusted my husband, I had nothing to worry about. As for my sister, she was going through a really difficult time, and I should just overlook all the strange things that she was going to say or do and just keep her around because as a part of the family, I owe this to them and I have to help out. That's when I snapped at them and told them that I didn't really owe them anything because this was their daughter, not mine, and it was their responsibility to take care of her. Earlier, I did think that I owed them something, which is why I brought her in, but now that it backfired, I wasn't going to entertain it anymore. It just didn't make sense. My parents and I went back and forth for a couple of minutes, after which they told me that I could either get a new home or just put up with my sister because I had already taken her in, and they were not going to force Becky to relocate once more just because I was insecure. And then they hung up without giving me a chance to reply. My husband and I were really mad because this was insanely entitled, and I couldn't believe that they actually thought that this was going to work. We went back out into the living room where Becky was and decided to tell her that the way she had behaved was extremely inappropriate, and we were not comfortable with her living with us anymore. Her reaction to that was nothing short of crazy, and she instantly started screaming at me, accusing me of being jealous of her all my life. She said that the only reason she had even wanted to move in with us was because she wanted to be closer to my husband and not me. Apparently, she had seen the way he used to look at her whenever we would come over during or even after the divorce, and she knew that he wanted to make a move, but I was the only one who stopped him from doing that. So, she had taken it upon herself to move in with us and make it easier for him to confess his feelings. My husband and I were actually dumbstruck when she said that because of the sheer incredulity of it. A few seconds later, my husband told her to get out and never come back, and that's when she seemed really surprised because she hadn't seen this coming. She tried to seem indignant and said that she knew what she had witnessed, and he was only trying to cover up his tracks now because he didn't want to mess things up with me. I lost my temper, and I screamed at her to get out, so she screamed right back and told me that she was leaving anyway because she had no interest in living with us since we were nothing but a bunch of losers anyway. So, she packed her things up quickly and left. We didn't know where she went, and after that we just wanted a quiet night, so we went to sleep. But unfortunately, my parents have not been able to find her yet since she hasn't been answering any calls, and she definitely didn't go to their place. So we basically have no idea where she is. Long story short, my parents are blaming me for it. They think that my husband and I made this happen, which is really unfair, but I do feel kind of guilty because had we been a little kinder to her, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. So, ITA for kicking my narcissistic sister out of my house? Update 1. Okay, so it's been a few days since my post here, and I just wanted to tell you guys that we found her. Becky had been crashing at a friend's place who lives a little out of town, and that's why we hadn't been able to trace her. But she is okay and just as delusional and crazy as ever. When my parents found her, she refused to come back with them because she claimed that she was too good to be living with her family anymore and wanted a place of her own. She said that she was sick of relying on people, first on Toby and then on my parents, so she wanted a home of her own, and guess what? My parents agreed to it. Of course, there's been no apology to me yet or my husband. My parents just put all this in a message and told me that I should be grateful that nothing bad had happened to her. They told me that they would be buying her a new apartment at the earliest so she could save her own money and start afresh. Now, I don't know why they thought that this was a necessary detail for me to know, but it's great that they told me, so now I know exactly where I stand. Clearly, my happiness is not very important to them, and at least now I know that. Update 2. It happened. They got her a new apartment. At least this time, they didn't text me in person to tell me about it. I found out from a bunch of our friends because she was posting about it relentlessly on social media, and after we kicked her out, she had blocked us everywhere, probably out of embarrassment because of the crazy incident. Either way, I don't mind it at all. My friend said I don't really know what she is up to because she's just not worth my time. I tried to be nice to her, but that blew up in my face magnificently. Now I'm done, and I don't want to ever have any interaction with her again. She's just not worth my time and energy. My parents and I still haven't spoken, and I guess they still think that I'm responsible for Becky going missing for those couple of days, even though nothing really happened to her, and she got her way in the end. She should probably be happy that I kicked her out because that's what got her the new apartment. Either way, my husband and I are doing great, and he's my only family as of now. Update 3. Hey, so it's been 1 month since Becky came over, flirted with my husband, and got herself kicked out of my house promptly. And then, like you all know, my parents bought her a new apartment to live in with their money instead of the money from the alimony because they wanted her to be able to save it. It's crazy that it's been such a long time since then, and yet nothing seems to have changed with either Becky or my parents. Neither of them has gotten back to me to apologize, and I have stopped holding out hope that they will at any point. Some people are just too selfish to think about anybody else apart from themselves, and I should know that. Becky actually was a narcissist. She should probably start therapy again, but I'm not going to tell her that because she's not my family anymore. My husband and I are still going strong and happy, and that's all that matters to me. My parents and Becky can take a hike. Now on to the next story. Story 3. 4-year-old son's inappropriate behavior at preschool revealed my wife's affair. I caught her on hidden camera and filed for divorce. I, 32 male, have been married to my wife, 31, for 4 years, and between us we've got a 4-year-old son. Our son is in preschool. I work long shifts as the primary breadwinner. My wife is in between jobs because she didn't like her old job. At least she's home to take care of our son. Recently, though, we were called into our son's preschool. They said that he had exhibited inappropriate behavior that had started about 3 weeks ago, trying to kiss girls, lifting up their skirts, and touching their butts. My wife and I were speechless. We could barely explain it because I'm always conscious of never behaving like that around my child. We're very strict about the programs we let him watch and always had a parent present when he went visiting or on playdates. As far as I knew, the only other place he could have picked up such strange ideas was at school. The teachers couldn't explain it either, especially since he was the only student behaving in that manner. Therefore, they were convinced that he had been exposed to that behavior at home. They had also done their part of talking to him, but clearly needed parental voices to back it up. We talked to our son about it and decided to consider therapy in case the behavior persisted. I couldn't shake the revelation, though, and thought I would have a chat with my son, man to man, and find out what had brought it on. I waited till my wife was away and asked him about his behavior, and in all his childlike innocence, he told me that the uncle who came over while I was at work did that to his mother, and she had never reprimanded him. To his 4-year-old mind, he thought that that minute was okay. His confession sparked my curiosity. It sounded like an affair, so I asked him a few questions. How often the uncle comes over? Most days. What do they do with mom? Kiss, giggle, and speak in whispers. How long does he stay over? Until I'm about to come back from work. I was furious. I was working hard to provide for our family, taking long hours at work and barely getting enough rest. Meanwhile, she was spending all her time cheating on me instead of looking for another job or being more present with our son. I planned to catch her in the act, so I laid out my strategy for my plan. I faked a trip to visit my parents with my son. I told her that we would stay for a few days to free her up since she had been our son's primary caregiver since she had quit her work. She didn't even object or suspect anything, so I packed up and made it seem like this trip was a genuine event. I had a camera in the living room and left with my son because I had no intention of going to my parents. I went to my brother who lives nearby. A few hours after we had left, our car pulled up outside our house, and the man got out. Using the camera in the living room, I watched as my wife and the man started making out in the living room. I was furious beyond belief, sad about my family, and heartbroken for my son. I recorded the video and sent it to her parents, brother, and other close family members. They all called me in a fit. Some of them decided to play ignorant and asked me what was going on. Had someone created a fake video or whatnot? Her parents called me and begged me to forgive the entire affair and try to work things out with her. They insisted that they had not raised their daughter that way, and there had to be a reasonable explanation for what had happened. They went ahead to say that they would talk to her themselves and get to the bottom of things. Her brother, on the other hand, was rightfully angry with her. He said he was shocked by her actions and would back me up with whatever course of action I chose to take. My wife also called once she saw the video and started begging and pleading for forgiveness. She claimed that she had been lured and didn't have it in her to resist, but she had seen the error of her ways and didn't want to lose her family. She insisted that she was willing to do anything to get back into my good graces. By that time, I was over the entire relationship. I was disappointed that I had missed all the signs and they had been going behind my back in a house I had paid for. Even worse was the fact that they had exposed my 4-year-old son to such behavior. I made up my mind to separate from her, so I asked her to leave the house since I was the one paying for it and maintaining it. It was only fair. I also let her know that we were done. I didn't want to keep up a relationship with someone who would lie to me and disrespect me. She refused to leave and refused to accept that we were done. She kept insisting that we could work it out, at the very least for the sake of our son. I told her that if she would not leave peacefully, then I would have to bring in the authorities, and she would never see her son again. That brought her to her senses. She finally left. I filed for divorce through my mediator. I expect to keep the house and the car. We had already been keeping our finances separate, and I'd negotiate no alimony too because of what had led to the dissolution of the marriage, and I'd fight for at least 50% or more custody. I have no problem with co-parenting, and I will closely monitor what my child is exposed to. I'm going to use her actions against her and full force in the divorce to get what I want, and my lawyer says the ball is in my court. I can't wait to be done with this nightmare and move on with my life. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Entitled Half-Sister Ruined My Clothes After Our Parents Forced Us to Share a Room in Our New House. So I lost it and attacked her. Then I told them who was the real owner of the house. So I, 17F, recently did something that everyone's really mad at me about, and I don't know what to think right now. I've been living with just my dad for the last couple of weeks because my mother had to go to LA for an assignment. My mom, 42F, and my dad, 48M, got married around the time that they found out that she was pregnant and have been together since then. My mother had never been married before, and I was her first child, but my dad had a daughter from his previous relationship. My half-sister, let's call her Dana, 22F, is pretty annoying and entitled, and we have never really gotten along. My dad never married her mother, and they had only been together for about a year when her mother found out that she was pregnant. They had already been thinking about breaking up when Dana's mother found out about the pregnancy. However, they tried to make things work when it was found out that they were pregnant. Unfortunately, that relationship did not last long, and they ended up breaking up shortly after Dana was born. They did work out a co-parenting agreement, and Dana would spend her weeks traveling between her parents' houses. About 3 years after Dana was born, my dad met my mother at a conference and asked her out. They started dating, and after 2 years they got married and had me. My father continued to raise Dana, and my mother didn't have a problem with that, but growing up, Dana and I were never close. I remember my father would try his very best to try and get us to be friends, but I don't know, neither of us really took to each other. We were a far cry from being half-sisters or whatever, we were not even friends, but that's how it was when we were kids. Gradually, even my dad realized that we were not interested in being friends with each other, so he stopped trying to get us to be friends. However, I had a great relationship with my dad, and I was pretty close to him. Whenever Dana was not around, I would have a great time being at home with my parents. I just didn't like whenever she would come over because then she would try to hog all the limelight, and it was easier for her because my dad only saw her on Fridays and the weekends. So it was understandable that my dad would give her a little more attention when she was around because it would only be a short while before she would go back to her mother again. I know she will never admit to it, but there was some degree of sibling rivalry. My father, however, was a good dad to me, and I have to give credit where it's due. As we started growing up, I started caring less about outdoing Dana or whatever, but I don't think she ever got over that phase because even after she got into college, she didn't stop her silly and childish behavior and would try to put me down for attention. She would brag about the fabulous college that she got into, even though I was literally just 13 at the time and wasn't even thinking about colleges. She would brag about her grades and try to show off how smart she was, even though I was better than her at her age. She would also brag about how much fun she was having at college every time she would come back home for the holidays. I thought it was really weird and unnecessary and would sometimes make fun of her right to her face, which would really annoy her, and we would end up getting into subtle, passive-aggressive cat fights. That all came to an end a couple of years ago, though, after her mom passed away. I think it was a week before she graduated when we got the news that Dana's mother had passed away from a sudden heart attack. It was a really sad event because she was not even 50 at the time, and she was just really young. Unfortunately, she had a really stressful lifestyle, and the doctor said that she had been told repeatedly that she needed to get regular checkups, but she did nothing to change things. It was a huge shock for the family because nobody even knew that she had been suffering for so long. Apparently, she had been having heart problems for a long time, but she hadn't told anybody about it. This shook Dana up, and after the funeral, something changed, and it was not for the better at all. It's really unfortunate, but due to the shock of the event, Dana started binge eating and developed a disorder. At first, it was barely even noticeable, but over time, we started noticing the signs. She had been living with us at the time, and it was me who told my father that I was concerned about her, and it wasn't even in a mocking way. I was genuinely worried because she was out of control. So my father and I did a lot of research, and we decided that it was time for my dad to talk to her about therapy and do something about this because things had to change. She was not happy about it in the least, and Dana blamed me, saying that this was just a ploy for me to get attention, and apparently I only wanted to label her as crazy. I honestly wish that was the case because then at least she would be safe from an eating disorder, but unfortunately that was not the truth and I really wanted to help her. After a lot of discussion, rebellion, and bargaining, Dana finally agreed to get help because she had ballooned up to an enormous size, and it was absolutely not healthy. So she finally went, and it took several months, but we started seeing improvement in her condition. She had already graduated by then and had been sitting at home because she was depressed, and understandably so. But after almost a year of her mother's passing, Dana decided that she was going to start looking for a job, and she found one within a couple of weeks. Despite my personal differences with her, she was actually a pretty good student and had great grades. She got hired pretty quickly, and within a few months, she was out of here. That was literally just half a year ago, and I expected her to stay in her own apartment after that. But for some reason, she decided that she didn't want to live on her own anymore and wanted to move back. I have no idea why she thought that it was a good idea, especially when she could afford to live on her own, but she's unpredictable, and my dad had started coddling her ever since her mother passed away, so he said yes without thinking twice. Unfortunately, my parents and I had also moved out of our old house a couple of weeks ago and moved into a new house that we had bought because we didn't want to pay anymore and wanted something of our own. We hadn't even fully finished unpacking yet, but my mother got a huge work opportunity in LA, and she had to go. She left within the first week, and my dad and I did all the unpacking. Our new house has 4 bedrooms. One was supposed to be mine, one was supposed to be for my parents, and the other 2 were meant to be for guests. One of the guest rooms was obviously intended for Dana, and the other one was for other people. It's a pretty spacious house, but the problem is that we have been using one of the guest rooms as a makeshift storeroom right now, so it's uninhabitable, and the other room that's empty doesn't even have a bed yet. Our previous house was already pre-furnished before we moved in, so we didn't have to buy a lot of things. This one, however, doesn't come with its own furniture, and my parents have already spent a lot of money, so buying a bed right now and furnishing 2 rooms that would probably not even be of any use for a long time didn't seem necessary. So we just left that room empty since we didn't know that Dana would randomly decide to move back in one day. But yeah, that happened 2 weeks ago, and my father just told me that she would be moving in with us, and I was expected to share my room with her because the other 2 rooms were uninhabitable. I was outraged because I'm a 17-year-old, and I need my own privacy. I also didn't want to share my room with Dana because I found her annoying, and I never had liked her and never would like her. I fought with my father a lot and even tried to get my mother to interfere, but she just told me that she was busy with work, and this was really petty of me since apparently the poor girl had just recently lost her mother and was trying to get back on her feet, so I should be there for her instead of rejecting her. My dad also had similar opinions on this and said that it was my moral duty to make Dana feel as welcome as I could instead of acting like a brat. I personally didn't think I was acting like a brat at all, and I honestly felt like this was Dana being entitled. I mean, honestly, she was working and earning her own money, so there was no reason that she couldn't live on her own, at least until the other room was furnished, or maybe she could just buy the bed herself and move into the other room. But apparently, she just wanted to move back here because she was lonely and also because she was saving up to quit her job and start something of her own. Small businesses for all ages. Right now, I even suggested that she sleep on the couch or something, but she wasn't on board with it because she said that it would hurt her back, and she already had a lot of issues with her back from when she was struggling with her weight, so that was not happening. And so I was told that I would have to share my room with Dana, and there was no way out of this. The saddest part of this was that I had to sleep on the floor in my own room, and I could tell that Dana was really enjoying this experience. She moved in 1.5 weeks ago, and it has been a nightmare for me since then. Not only is she literally the most annoying person to live with, but she's also a total slob, and I can't deal with that. She is constantly talking to people on the phone as loudly as she can, and it's really disturbing when I'm trying to study, so I have to finish all my homework before she comes back home, and I don't even get to rest when I come back from school because I only have a couple of hours before she comes back. She also made a mess of my room pretty much on the day that she moved in with me, and it was horrible. No matter how much I clean up, it's always the very next day. I complained about it to my dad after dinner one day last week, but he told me that I just had to suck it up and deal with it because she was going through something, and as a family we had to be there for her. And he was right. Maybe I've had my own problems, but at least my mother is still alive and so is my dad, so I don't really know how she feels. Besides, she's still recovering from an eating disorder, and that couldn't have been easy, so I was willing to cut her some slack and give her the benefit of the doubt. However, 3 days ago, she really crossed a line, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I snapped. 3 days ago, I left really early in the morning to go to a friend's house, and I spent almost the entire day there. I came back home in the evening because it was a Saturday, and I didn't have school the next day, so I could do whatever I wanted. I was in a great mood until I came back to my room and saw all my clothes lying on the floor. It appeared to me that most of my outfits had been either stretched out or even worse, torn. I was horrified because I couldn't even imagine why anybody would do this until Dana came back into my room and told me that she could explain. Apparently, she had been trying on all my outfits because she needed something pretty to wear to a coworker's wedding next week, and she couldn't find anything in her own belongings that still fit. She was smiling at me while she told me this and had a really smug look on her face because she knew exactly what she was doing. She had known all along, and she was just trying to mess with me. She knew that if her own clothes didn't fit her anymore, there was no way on earth that my clothes would fit her because I am several sizes smaller than her. She knew that, but it didn't stop her from trying on all my clothes because she knew that it would pretty much ruin them or tear them, and it would become all loose and weird on me after that. She had done this on purpose, and she wanted me to know, which is why she had laid it all out on the floor for me to see when I came back home. It was pretty diabolical, and for the first couple of minutes, I didn't even have anything to say to her because I was just that horrified. She continued to smile at me while I just stared down at the mess she had created. But then I lost my temper, and I did something that I was not very proud of. I walked right up to her and smacked her on the face. I had been stretched pretty thin already, and everybody had been testing my patience with her by forcing me to live with her and sleep on the floor of my own room just because her mother had passed away, and she was using that to her advantage shamelessly. After I smacked her, There was no looking back because she had a significant advantage over me since she was quite bigger, and soon enough we were in a full-blown brawl. I got a few good scratches in and she took out my hair, but I was glad that I got to hit her, and even though I'm not very proud of it, she deserved it. My dad heard us fighting, and it took him a while, but he was able to break us up eventually. I thought that he would at least ask us what happened, but he didn't even wait and just started yelling at me about my behavior. He didn't even bother to wait for an explanation and just assumed that this was my fault. He told me that I had been behaving like a spoiled brat ever since Dana moved in with us, and he needed me to cut it out because otherwise, he would have to kick me out and send me to live with my grandparents. He thought that I was being entitled, and apparently, I was being heartless and petty by putting Dana through so much and tormenting her all the time. He was saying all the right things, but to the wrong person. I was so disappointed and hurt that I didn't even say anything to him and just let him yell at me while Dana enjoyed the show. It was extremely disappointing for me because I had always firmly believed that my father loved the two of us equally and would never pick sides. But as of now, Dana was using her trauma from her mother's passing and the eating disorder to seem like a victim and was shamelessly milking it just to get me in trouble. Let me just remind you guys that this is a 22-year-old woman with a job that we are talking about and not some 15-year-old with unsolved issues. She knows exactly what she's doing, but I don't know why she's doing it. I was really hurt and upset, and after my dad was done yelling at me, I grabbed my phone and stormed out of the house. Nobody tried to stop me because they knew that I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I would be back in a couple of hours anyway. And they were right. I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I decided to go take a walk in the park. I was fuming, and even walking wasn't helping me cool down. So, in the heat of the moment, I opened social media and decided to make a post about my dad and Dana. As soon as I started typing, the words started flowing out because I was really very upset about all of this, and I didn't have to think much about what I wanted to say. I told everybody in the post about how my dad had been behaving and how my mother also seemed to be on his side because they believed that Dana was some long-suffering figure and deserved our sympathy. But the truth was that she was only using her mother's demise as a cover-up for her own terrible behavior, and it was disgusting. But it was exactly what she was doing. She was just so good at it that people were finding it hard to deduce that she was actually just putting on an act to show people how upset she was, and then she could get away with anything she wanted to do. And for some reason, she was using our parents' sympathy for her to make my life a living nightmare. I don't know why she was doing it, but I did know that it was working, and I couldn't take it anymore because it was downright torture for me. Now, after typing it all out, I posted it and then decided to walk it off. I think I must have been walking for about 2 hours, and my phone was switched off, so I had no idea about what was going on behind the scenes. After I was done walking, I started heading back home to face the music. I knew that I was going to get yelled at for the post, but I didn't anticipate that my dad would threaten to kick me out the second that I walked into the house. My dad and Dana started screaming at me about where I had been and demanded an explanation for what I had just posted. I told them as calmly as I could that the post was exactly how I felt, and it was long overdue because the two of them had been very difficult to live with, and I couldn't do this anymore. I told my father that I was sick of living with Dana because not only was she a terrible person, but she was also a huge slob, and I hated her from the bottom of my heart. At that point, Dana started crying crocodile tears, probably just to get me in more trouble, and it worked. My father started yelling at me like crazy and said that I owed her a huge apology, and it had to be a public one just like my post had been. He said that he was ashamed of me and that he had expected so much better from me. When I told him that I was not going to apologize to anybody, he told me that I could either apologize or get the heck out of his house. Apparently, he was not going to tolerate this kind of behavior, and I needed to realize that there would be consequences to my actions, and I couldn't just get away with everything that I wanted to do. It was even more infuriating because once again, he was saying these things to the wrong person, and Dana was the one who needed to hear it. So, in a fit of rage, I told him that the house didn't even belong to him, and it was actually Mom's house, so he had no right to kick me out anyway. Now, I wasn't supposed to say that because I had found out accidentally. I was going through my mother's belongings in the first few days after we had moved into the house, at first to try and search for something that actually belonged to me. I thought that it must have gotten mixed up and was going through my mom's stuff when I found a deed to our house, and it only had my mom's name on it. I thought that it was pretty suspicious, but I never brought it up with anyone because I didn't think it was my business. As long as I was getting to live in this house, I didn't really care, and I also thought that they must have talked about it and discussed these things, so I had no need to poke my nose where it didn't belong. But it just slipped out while I was fighting with my dad, and he seemed taken aback. He tried to deny it at first and said that I was lying, but I told him to go check out the deed for himself if he didn't believe me. It was under lock and key in his bedroom, and he could have checked it out whenever he wanted to, but he hadn't because he trusted my mother with the paperwork, and it just didn't seem necessary at the time or even later. But when I said that, he rushed to the bedroom immediately, and even Dana was shocked, so she stopped crying. And surely enough, a couple of minutes later, my dad came out of the bedroom, and he was all red in the face because what I had said turned out to be true. He asked me how long I had known, and I told him that I had known about this from pretty much the day that we moved in. After that, he went back into his room and abandoned his fight with me because, of course, this was more important. Even Dana went back into our room, but I didn't feel comfortable going back into that room, so I decided to sleep on the couch. I didn't have any back problems, so I could sleep there pretty easily. It was still better than sleeping on the floor. But I didn't really get the chance to sleep because a couple of hours after I had revealed the big secret to my father, I received a call from my mother, and she put me on blast immediately. She told me that I had no right to spill something like that without first speaking to her about it, and apparently I had ruined something pretty big. Now, my mother told me that the house had actually been a gift from her parents because she and my father recently celebrated their wedding anniversary, and my grandpa wanted to do this for them. And all the money that my parents had spent on buying the house went into the retirement fund, and my mother had been planning to tell my father about all of this on their second honeymoon that they were about to take in a couple of months when she came back from her work assignment. She had been building up to the surprise for months now, and it was going to be huge because she was even planning on paying for their vacation to the Greek islands all from the money that they had saved from the house. Unfortunately, I had ruined the surprise, and not only that, but I had caused a huge fight between my parents because my dad believed that my mother should have just told him instead of trying to surprise him with this. So now she had to fly back home in the middle of a really busy week and try to fix her marriage because I opened my big mouth just because I was having some petty fight with my half-sister. She also said that she was really disappointed in me, and that was pretty much the last straw for me. It was an already sucky day, and it felt like everybody was against me at that point in time. It's been a couple of days since, and nobody's speaking to me. I even took down the post, but that hasn't changed anything, and I'm still being treated like a pariah in my own home. My dad doesn't even look at me anymore, and I haven't heard from my mother yet, but I know for a fact that she isn't happy about any of this, and I'll get to hear about it when she comes back to talk to my father. Until then, it's just going to be silent in this house, and I'll just have to deal with it because I guess it might be my fault. I've been thinking about everything for a really long time now since I have a lot of time on my hands to overthink everything, and I don't know, I just feel like I could have avoided a lot of this if I dealt with things calmly instead of trying to get back at Dana. I don't regret the fact that I attacked her when I saw what she did to my clothes, even though it seems pretty insignificant now, but I do have some regrets about the post that I made because I shouldn't have aired dirty laundry like that. That was unnecessary, and I guess I screwed up somehow. But also, after the way that I had been treated for weeks, anybody in my position would have lost their mind and snapped. I don't even know if I should apologize at this point or not, or even if it will make a difference to the situation, but nevertheless, am I the a-hole for making a post attacking my dad and half-sister because they were forcing me to share a room with her? Update 1. Hi. Thank you guys so much for all the supportive comments and messages. I am really grateful for all of it, and yeah, that really helped me make sense of things, and I'm doing a lot better mentally right now. I guess the fact that things have been sorted out with my parents also helps. It's been a week since I posted, and a couple of days after my post, my mother returned, and we decided to have a family meeting and finally clear the air between us. Interestingly enough, that was done at a time when Dana was not at home, and even more curiously, it was my father who suggested that we do it when Dana is not at home. So they took a day off of work and waited for her to go to work, and then we decided to talk. It was kind of uncomfortable for me, but I shared my feelings with them, and everything that I said here I told them. They actually seemed to understand, which I didn't think was possible, but they told me that they could understand where I was coming from. And then my father told me that after the huge blow-up that he had with me, he decided to talk to Dana about certain things, and he realized that everything that I had said was true, and he had been a fool all along. Apparently, she had been laying it on thick and had been trying to manipulate him against me. After our fight, he didn't understand what was going on, but she kept making up stuff, and after a certain point, even he knew that I was not capable of doing such things and could tell that something was weird. Once he figured out that she had been trying to play us all, he decided that he could no longer trust his gut about this and decided that he was going to have to talk to us in person. My parents had already sorted things out between them, and they were okay with the deed and the retirement fund and everything, so this is the only thing that we actually had to discuss. After some deliberation, my parents decided that it would be for the best if we told Dana to leave because what she had done was unacceptable, and she actually had been milking her mother's demise for something so petty that it was distasteful. So to sum it up, Dana has been asked to leave, and she threw a huge fit about it and accused me of trying to sabotage her future, which was interestingly exactly what she had been trying to do, so that was clearly projecting. But I finally realized why she hated me so much. It was just because she could, and she was just a terrible person who got off on other people's misery. Mystery solved. Update 2. Hi, so Dana has left, but my mother has stayed back for a couple of days more, and she believes that we need to start family therapy. She's going to join the online sessions, and we're all going to try and make this work. I have my fingers crossed, and I hope that this brings us all closer because the last few months have been tough, and I just really want everything to go back to normal. Update 3. Hey, it's been almost a year since my last update, and I'm thrilled to inform you guys that I'm starting college in a couple of weeks. I got into the school of my choice, and we are all really happy. My mother finished up her assignment a couple of months ago and has been living with us ever since, and it finally feels like a perfect family again. Dana has had no contact with us since she left. Thank God for that. Therapy has been going well, and I don't know, I feel like everything has fallen into place, and I couldn't be more grateful to the universe for it. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Wife and I took in a troubled foster daughter and watched her grow. But when we decided to adopt her, my father-in-law is against it, called her a warehouse. My wife, 37F, and I, 38M, have 2 biological teenage sons, one older and one younger than our foster daughter. We have been fostering kids for many years, but the goal has always been to reunify the kids with their parents, which has happened successfully each time until now. 2 years ago, we took in our foster daughter, now mid-teens. She had been through a lot and was labeled as a troubled kid and not adoptable. I won't go into details, but the issue in this matter is that there are images of her going around amongst a certain community from before we took her in. We were informed by authorities about all of this before, so it's not like this came as a surprise after we got to know her. I'm not going to lie, it has not been easy. Our families have seen a struggle, but almost everyone has been super supportive. The first 5 to 6 months were the hardest. She didn't trust us and she was angry at the world, rightfully so. Then, one random night, I got up in the middle of the night and unintentionally ended up scaring her shitless, and she had a full-blown panic attack. She was okay after a little while, but it was like something clicked for her that night. It was like she realized that we were on her side, and we watched her change from this angry and sad little girl to the ambitious young teenager we know today. It started with her telling us thank you for everything we did, small things like driving her to practice, and she said it with a smile on her face. It was so amazing to see her feeling better and not so lonely anymore. From there, everything changed. She made new friends and got a lot closer to my sons, especially the older one. Her grades went from failing multiple classes to getting straight A's, not because we were nagging her, but because she wanted to. Each member of our household has developed a good and strong relationship with her, and the love we have for this girl cannot be put into words. We've reached that cosmic connection. She still struggles with a few things, which is totally fair after all she's been through, but she is working on it, and we are supporting her in every way we can. Overall, she's doing amazing. She's so strong, and I'm very proud of her. We made the decision to fight the system to change their verdict from not adoptable to available for conditional adoption because we want to commit to her for life. We want to adopt her. Last month, we got the call that they changed their verdict, and we sent in our papers that were already ready, and things are looking very promising. The thing is, we haven't told her yet. She knows that she is now adoptable, but we haven't asked her if she wants us to officially adopt her yet. My wife and I have talked to our sons about it, and they are fully on board. We talked to my parents, our brothers and sisters, and their spouses. All of them have a good relationship with our daughter, and every single one of them is so supportive of our decision and willing to fully welcome our daughter into our family. Then there's his wife's parents. Mill hasn't been awful, I guess, but maybe it's because I'm comparing what she said to what Phil said. We told them about our plan and asked them about their opinion. Mill asked if we were sure, as our daughter doesn't quite fit in. My wife and I didn't understand at all, since our daughter has a very similar personality as we and our sons do, but it turns out she's concerned about the visual side of it, as she's clearly not our biological child, and people will start asking questions. The thing is, my wife, myself, and our sons are very tall. Our daughter is not. She is tiny compared to us and has a similar color, but not the exact same. All 5 of us have the same skin tone and colored and textured hair. Not that I think this matters at all, but the stupidity of it is unreal. Apart from height, she could pass as our biological daughter, so I'm starting to think this is a lame excuse for something else. I told her that people would ask questions no matter what, because even if our daughter was the spitting image of my wife, it's not like she suddenly gave birth to a teenager 2 years ago, and the answer to any question is very simple. She's adopted. Tata, it's not like it could ever become a secret now, so I don't get it. Mill didn't say much after that, but it was very clear she was not on board. Phil hadn't said anything, but he didn't seem excited at all. I asked for his opinion, and he just stared at us for a minute, and then he said, "Don't do this to yourself and our family." It's safe to say I was confused, but I had no idea what to say. After a few more seconds, he went off. He started talking about their family name, and he didn't want that ruined by a little WH, and what would people think if they saw these images floating around on the internet? I was stunned. My wife couldn't find any words either and started crying before she just left. I didn't say a word while Phil finished ranting, but 1,000 thoughts went through my head. Eventually, he stopped talking, and I still had trouble finding any words to say. I just told him, "You were sick," and I left too. My wife is destroyed after hearing what her father thinks about our daughter. We have no idea how they know about these images, as we haven't told anyone about it. I'm 100% certain my wife didn't tell them, as their relationship is not that great. My wife is closer to my mother than her own, so that wouldn't make sense. We have tried to hide this from the kids since this happened, but my older son sensed something was very wrong and asked about it. I told him our conversation with IL about adopting our daughter didn't go very well, and they weren't supportive. He wanted to know why. I told him I couldn't tell him, but that it was serious, and promised to talk to him about it in a few years when he's an adult, and I assured him that our daughter didn't do anything wrong. Our plans haven't changed, and that it's Phil who is being unreasonable. My son told me that our daughter told him a few months ago that she didn't think eels liked her very much, especially Phil. This happened 2 days ago, and we haven't spoken to them since. I'm not sure I even want to try, TBH. For me, this is going no contact worthy. I want nothing to do with them. My wife is in pieces and has mentioned that she doesn't want them in her life after this. This has tainted our adoption experience for sure. I'm afraid though that if we piss Phil off even more, that he will start talking to our family about these images. I do realize that he will look like a pig in everyone's eyes, but I would like to spare our daughter from everyone knowing about what's out there. I usually talk to my mother about heavy stuff in life, but I cannot talk to her about this without feeling like I'm exposing my daughter by telling my mother more than I want to for my daughter's sake. Internet strangers, I have no idea what to do from here. How do I go about the situation with Phil without creating more mess than absolutely necessary for my daughter? Edit to add. Just to be very clear, there's no doubt in our minds that we still want to ask for our daughter's permission to adopt her. Our relationship with our daughter will not change no matter what Phil does or does not do. I realized from the first couple of comments that it became unclear after the Phil incident. Sorry about that. Edit to add. 4 hours later. I'm glad to see I'm not the only one possibly hopefully reading too much into this. I think you have verified I'm not crazy. Wife and I had a brief talk after I posted and have decided to talk to her brothers and sister first about Phil's comments. It will be a hard conversation, but it needs to happen. Before I could get to it, my wife told me she wants to report the situation with her father knowing about the images of our daughter. Right now, we don't know what that looks like, but it has simply not been possible for him to gain this knowledge legally. There is a culprit for sure, but we will leave that to the authorities for now. Thank you for giving me a reality check, and thank you for your encourage. We need it right now. Comments where Op has replied. Comment. Is he religious in a religion that looks down on sex? Because that's pretty much the only non-creepy explanation for why he might actually in this way. Either way, I'd be contemplating reporting to the authorities. Opie, religious, yes, the no sex before marriage kind of thing, but I wouldn't say that's an overly extreme opinion compared to other people I know in their church. The big difference has to be that they have heard of a thing called compassion. He must have skipped that day of Sunday school or something. In his rainy, kept saying our daughter is dirty as if she did this when in reality this was done to her. I don't get it really. Yes, we did decide to involve the authorities. Opie, on child welfare system and how messy things are with the children being the targets. We actually took a course about this shortly after we took our daughter in. We were told so many predictable things and still thought we got this. We didn't. It was so hard watching how hard she was on herself. She had no confidence, no self-worth, and she was literally scared of us. She has come such a long way and everything seems as perfect, but the reality is that her view on sexuality is still really messed up. Thankfully, she is comfortable enough with both me and my wife to be quite open about it. If it's fun boy talk, she talks to me, and if it's more serious, she turns to my wife. Most kids in the system are not lucky enough to have the respect your own body talk even once. It's really sad. Opie, on the biological parents' rights and adoption processes in his state. No, the parents' rights were terminated many years ago to my knowledge. Not adoptable is not a legal label anywhere, but I could be wrong. In our agency, my understanding is available for adoption means their caseworker is actively looking for adoptive parents for these kids. Not adoptable are kids that the agency deems to be too risky to place permanently with a family because of one thing or another, or kids that do not want to be adopted, so their caseworker is not looking for adoptive parents for these kids. Our daughter was in this group because she was completely closed off and non-cooperative. She was angry and hated everyone and everything and did not want to be adopted. Available for conditional adoption kids caseworker looks for adoptive parents, but the kids usually have some sort of ongoing issues, are harder to find parents for. In our case, it's really important for our daughter to follow up on her for years to come because, for example, the risk of her becoming depressed suicidal later because of her past is relatively very high. If we adopt her, both we and her therapist are required to report back to the agency every 4 months about how she is doing until she's 18, and if she's not doing well and we're not getting her the help she needs, the agency has the legal right to intervene. Oh, and for the adoption to even go through to begin with, there are several extra requirements for us as a family compared to what is standard. Update March 1st, 2024. I wasn't prepared for my last post to blow up like it did. I am so thankful for everyone's support. It can be hard to see how messy a situation is when you're in the middle of it and so emotionally involved as I am. So I appreciate everyone pointing out a lot of worrying details. These last few days have been a whirlwind. I have realized how messed up the situation is, but at the same time, people around us have shown how far they are willing to go to protect our little girl and how loved she is. I got a lot of questions, and this post will be a long one, but I will answer as best as I can. I'll break things up a little for clarity. Eels and with siblings. My wife and I decided to cut the eels off completely. There is no coming back from this. We talked to her siblings about it to give them our side before they hear Phil's messed up version. We told them what our daughter has been through without giving details off. They don't normally show emotion that much. It's just how they were raised. But even my oldest Bill, who was the toughest of them, had to dry his eyes a few times during the conversation. Understandably, we told them about what happened with the eels when we talked to them about adopting our daughter, and they were pissed. They agreed that this needed to be reported, and Bill's wanted to be included in what was going on from there. Phil and the legal situation. Long story short, both Mill and Phil went in for questioning. For now, it looks like this happened through gossip. I'm not exactly sure if the authorities have figured out all the details yet, but I will stand back and let them do their job. Some of you mentioned that child victims of these sorts of crimes are often moved to new environments for their own safety and protection. This is the case with our daughter, but if there are leakages in the system, all that work will be for nothing, and the children who are promised a second chance at a normal life will have their whole lives ruined once again. That means this is a much bigger issue than this one incident. Investigators are taking this very seriously, and we do trust them. Phil's explanation and electronics. My Bills and I tried to talk to Phil about his opinion of my daughter. He did repeat what he said the other day and doubled down. Phil did use God in the Bible a lot as reasons for his opinion. I don't want to blame religion because I know a lot of religious people who are amazing human beings, and none of them would ever say gross stuff like this. Oldest Bill gave Phil a lecture. He was told that it's more than enough that Phil's children think he is a mystic piece of, they don't need to think he's also a predator prying on young children. There may or may not have been a threat or two mentioned about exposure. Seriously, this man Bill is the calest, most loving human I have ever met. Every child in the family loves this guy. I have known him for almost 20 years, but that night he showed a side of him I had never seen before. I would have pissed myself if he was in my face like he was in Phil's. Phil willingly gave Elle every single piece of electronic device to clear his name. Even every VHS tape was given up. If everything is clear, he will be given everything back, so hopefully he doesn't have anything to worry about. My lovely wife. I'm NGL, my wife is struggling. She is in pieces after her parents' reaction. They are wrong in every way possible and have been wrong in many other ways through the years, but it seems like this was her breaking point, like she realized that there is no hope that her parents will ever become the parents she wished for. My parents have always known her relationship with her parents wasn't great, so they have stepped up for her a little differently than my siblings' partners. My wife has a good relationship with my parents, and I did give them a little heads up that there is stuff going on and my wife is struggling. My mother has been coming by every day just to check in, to talk, and to give my wife an extra hug. She made dinner a few times when we were busy, and my father has been giving the kids rides to either school or practice SL games every day. They have taken a huge load of stress off my wife and me so we could concentrate on what is going on right now without worrying about the kids. After a few days, we told them how inappropriately my Phil had been and talking about our daughter. My parents know about our daughter's essay but nothing more in no details, and that we are cutting them off for good. My parents are awesome, and they love my wife almost more than me and promised her to step in not just for the kids but for her as well, so in time, I believe my wife will be okay. We will get through this together. My wife and her siblings. I don't like the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My wife and her siblings are the total opposites of their parents. They are amazing people and they are raising their kids to be amazing people. Their parents suck, but they came together and broke the circle. Sometimes the apple rolls away from the tree. The rest of the extended family. My wife and I are both close with all of our siblings, and we do live in a relatively small enough town that everyone knows everything about everyone BC of gossip, so we sort of had to include my siblings and our sibling spouses. We told them a very short version of what was going on. That yes, we are cutting the eels off because they are not supportive of our decision to adopt our daughter. And Phil had said some very rude and inappropriate stuff about our daughter, and Mill was on his side, but out of respect for our daughter, to please not ask questions without reasons, and we encouraged everyone to come to us directly if there were any rumors or anything going on. Everyone is very supportive, and they agree that our daughter deserves privacy and respect, and that the eels are why we included so many people in our decision to adopt our daughter. I got a few skeptical but fair questions about why we asked for people's opinions about the adoption. I get the skepticism, and that is partially on me for not explaining that part very well. It was not so much that we wanted our extended family's opinion and approval, but more so that we knew where everyone was in regards to welcoming our daughter as a permanent member of our family. She is in her mid-teens, and we have only known her for 2 years. That's a lot of life to live before coming into our lives. It's not the same as welcoming a baby or a toddler into the family. We never got to take her to the park to play with her brothers and her cousins when she was a child. She wasn't present at family birthdays growing up. We didn't experience her first day of school. Every Christmas Eve when we were watching Home Alone with our boys growing up, she wasn't there. All of a sudden, there's an extra teenage niece, cousin SLG granddaughter, and that might not come naturally to everyone. Our boys have a close relationship with my parents and their aunts, uncles, and cousins, but although everyone has welcomed and loved every single one of our foster kids, everyone knew these kids already had parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, and our family always respected that. Our daughter has never had any of that. She was truly alone in this world when she came to us. She is now in the process of gaining a SHT ton of family that she never had before. That's a lot to take in as a teenager. Our intent is to guide and help her as much as we can in her relationship with everyone in our family. But to do that, we need to know what kind of relationship our family is ready to have with her. That's why we ask them, and we are thankful that they are so welcoming. I know I said my wife isn't very close to her parents, but they did have a relationship before this storm started, and they would become our daughter's grandparents. I don't know if it's right or wrong to include them given the relationship wasn't that great to begin with, but I'm glad we did, so they had the chance to show their true colors before our daughter got the chance to bond with them as her grandparents. The dark side in general. I'm going to be very vague here, partially to protect my daughter and partially because I simply don't have a lot of info. Our daughter was a part of a larger case SL Circle that was uncovered a few years ago. She went through this hell for years. The FBI was all over it when these people were discovered, and the people behind this case are in prison thanks to them. The problem is that the circles that are distributing the material are very complicated. Even though a lot of the material was found and locked down back then, given the amount of material and the time span, there is just no way they got it all. Sadly, this is the case in most cases when digital material reaches these online circles that distribute it worldwide. I do want to say I have so much respect for the people working on nailing these sick animals, as it is incredibly hard mentally to do what they do. Our daughter and the storm. I have to admit I don't know what is right and what is wrong to do about informing our daughter about what is going on. But we did ask our caseworker to have a meeting with our daughter's therapists, so we can find the best way to go about this together. The four of us have had regular meetings these last 2 years to make sure we are all on the same page and work together. These people are awesome and put their hearts into what they do, so I'm sure we will figure this out as well. Our daughter's adoption process. After our daughter turned her whole life around and came out of her shell, we noticed more and more how well we fit together as a family. Don't get me wrong, my wife loves our boys, but it has been a whole new experience admiring her bonding with our daughter over girl stuff. I am a real dad jokes kind of dad, while our boys just laugh in my face when I bring my best work. Our girl rolls her eyes and scoffs at me while trying to hide a smile. Our boys really know how to wrap their mother around their little finger, while I see right through them, but this girl melts my heart. Her pleas combined with the puppy eyes, and I am sold, while my wife is a hard ass. I guess that's what they mean when they talk about the typical difference between having boys and girls. Anyway, we brought it up with our caseworker last year that we were interested in adopting our girl. She walked us through what that would entail, and we were up for it. Our daughter has been talking to her therapist and her caseworker throughout the process of changing the verdict to available for adoption, and she knows we are wanting to adopt her, and we were only waiting for the last paperwork to go through before we could ask for a court date, and she has told both of them she wants us to adopt her. After all the mess she has been through, it's important to her to have a sense of control over her own life, so we did make sure she knew it was coming. But at the same time, we wanted to make this really special for her. That's why we chose to do it this way. The day after my post, our caseworker called to let us know that our paperwork had gone through. We arranged a family outing for the 5 of us. I'm not going to give too many details for our daughter's privacy, but we had such a great day together, and we asked for her permission, and guess what? She said yes. We laughed, we cried, it was overwhelming. It's finally official, we are adopting her. That same night, my wife and daughter were in the living room talking while I was working in the office. My wife called me into the living room, so I went in there to talk to them, and my girl asked me, from now on, is it okay if I call you Dad? Man, I did not expect this. I would be absolutely okay with her to keep using my name, but this is an honor. OFC, I said yes. I'd be honored for her to call me Dad. When I dropped her off for practice the next day, it really hit me when she in front of her friends and all said, "Bye, Dad. Love you." I may or may not have shed a tear or two on my way home. Now we are mom and dad to 3. We don't have a court date yet, but it will probably be this summer or maybe this fall. We are thinking of having a huge adoption party when that happens, but our girl will decide what she wants when that time comes. What we do know is that we're looking forward to it regardless. College. If adopted, we have been told our daughter will lose some privileges when it comes to college tuition when we adopt her. I haven't looked too much into it yet, as we are not there yet age-wise, but it's not something we are worrying about. We make more than enough to put all our kids through college. We will look more into it when it becomes relevant. Right now, the adoption is more important than money. Adoption in the Phil situation. As of now, it doesn't look like Phil had access to the content of our daughter. It looks like he's only a misogynistic piece of, in BC we have gone no contact. He is a non-issue in the adoption process. If something dark sees the light of day, it will very possibly play a role in court. That does not mean we don't want him exposed if he is a predator. Our girl's safety is even more important than the adoption, but BC we have gone no contact. It is very unlikely our daughter would ever be removed from our care. It would probably mean more of a large bump in the road on our way to adoption. Right now, all we can do is cross our fingers and wait for answers. Our sons. I will say our sons have made our daughter's recovery a whole lot more manageable. Yes, we as then foster parents focused on loving our girl, and we never reprimanded her for acting out because we understood where her pain came from, but she did all the work necessary while we were supportive and gave her a nudge here and there in the right direction, but we feel like our boys have done at least as much for her as we have. They just don't know it. Our boys were initially not informed about our daughter's say, as there was no reason for it. They were informed about the physical abuse in general, no details, just enough to understand that our girl didn't like to be touched without permission. They were very respectful of her, and our youngest even felt bad for her when he hugged me or my wife in front of her because he felt like she deserved love as well. They will never fully comprehend what our girl has been through, but they will also never understand how much they have helped her by just existing around her. They have shown her what healthy relationships with family look like and what boundaries are. Our older son and our daughter are close in age, and he introduced her at school to his friend group, including her now best friend. She has observed our boys a lot during her time with us, and they have played a huge role in teaching her how to live a worry-free teenage life. This has resulted in them having such a great sibling bond, and that melts my heart. To the few people who predict that our girl will end up pregnant by one of our boys, go outside and listen to the birds sing, read a book, try out a new hobby. There are a lot of really interesting things in this world other than your favorite family videos on the hub. I'm sure I have forgotten a few things, and there are a few questions I cannot answer, especially when it comes to investigations and other legal stuff, and I did change a few benign details to throw people off for privacy reasons to protect our girl. If there is update-worthy stuff later when the investigations have been concluded, I may give it, but that won't happen for at least several months. For now, I just wanted to update you guys on our girl, and assure you that she is okay. Internet strangers, thank you for your support, advice, and encouragement, and most of all, thank you for caring about our girl, my wife, our family, and victims in general. The world is not that bad after all. Top comments. Comment 1. The amount of tears I have shed over this post. I'm not in a position to foster children, but I am so grateful for people like you and your wife. There's so many terrible people in the system. Every wonderful family like yours keeps a child out of the hands of abusers and predators. Thank you so much for the update. Wishing all the happiness for your family. Comment 2. Congrats on your new daughter. You have navigated this difficult situation with wisdom, who seem like really good people, and I wish your family all the best. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I divorced my husband because he tried to poison me while I was pregnant for his dirty affair. Hello everyone. This is my very first post in here, so please be gentle with me. I just want advice because honestly at this point I'm not sure how to handle anything in life. So my husband, 27, and I, 26, met in medical school. He was dating this girl of 6 years and they were both a year above me, so I never really knew anything about them nor was I friends with them. My husband and his ex were an on and off thing for these 6 years. She graduated on time, whereas he had a year where we took classes together and started dating. A few months into dating, I found out that he had a secret Twitter account and posted something along the lines of, "You will always be the one I loved even though we're not together anymore." However, I was dumb and I let it go after a fight and after he reassured me that nothing was going on between them. I loved him and I wanted to trust him. I figured it was a spare in the moment kind of thing and we never brought it up again. A few months later, he proposed and I said yes. I was excited, really happy. However, I knew his mom was not on board with me at first. This is because we both come from a different background, different culture, and even have slightly different beliefs. Once both families were both on board, we announced our engagement. The first red flag I experienced before we even got married was how disrespectful he was to me in front of other people. We went apartment hunting once, and he called me stupid in front of other people for trying to point out things that we needed to look for in any apartment. The second red flag was when he pushed me to agree to live in that apartment, and the third red flag is that he lied to me about signing the contract already with that apartment complex so I wouldn't ask him to look for more apartments. I was so in love with him back then that I didn't realize those were big red flags. Of course, there were other red flags like him wanting to spend more time with his friends than me, his fiancée. However, let's get to the real problem. He is a huge mama's boy. He's the oldest son and they only have 2 sons. His parents have raised him to believe that they should always be his #1 priority and that his blood-related family should always come first, even before his wife. He believes it too, although he does not admit it. We fought several times about him always choosing his mother's side. For example, when we went to pick a wedding date and his mom wanted that specific date and he literally fought his way to get it. I'm honestly surprised at myself typing all of this because of how much BS I've accepted to let go of. As time went by, I realized that he tells his parents, his mother specifically, like everything. Everything about us, about me, my secrets I've shared with him about my family and about our relationship. She knows about our fights, what I'm like as a wife, and even our sexual activities. I was shocked, and that's not even the biggest part. They would both get together and discuss what his next move should be to try to teach me a lesson so I wouldn't fight over X again or act out. I was mortified when I found out. For example, he goes out with his friends who are single still on a daily basis, literally on a daily basis. I've asked why to try to understand, complained to him multiple times and started fighting about it. Lately, I just want to feel married. I'm not controlling like he tries to make me sound. I just want to spend time with my partner. He could go out as much as he liked, but on a daily basis coming home at 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, even on weekdays. I sleep at 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. most times, so I'm always asleep when he's home. I don't even get to hug, cuddle, or talk to him at night. It breaks my heart how detached he is from all of this. So anyways, back to the example, he would tell his mom that I was fighting to him about staying out all day and night, and she would tell him that he's the man and he could do whatever he wants and would tell him to not let me speak to him that way next time. She would tell him things to do and he'd apply every single advice he's gotten from her. Recently, I had a miscarriage. We were fighting before the miscarriage happened about a lot of things. One of them is about how he's giving his mother almost 1/5 of his salary when she doesn't need it because her husband works a really good job and makes a good amount of money, and B, we're in need of this money as we don't even own a house yet. And the fight wasn't even about me telling him to stop. It was more of him getting really angry at me for just suggesting that he thinks about whether this sum of money that he's paying to his mother could maybe instead be saved for us to buy a house with in the future, especially since she doesn't even need it. He got really mad, threatened with divorce, swore at me all the while I'm pregnant, then dropped me at my parents and left. I was crying, depressed, felt lonely. Shortly after, I started bleeding. I had a miscarriage. About a week later, he was still mad at me, suggesting to think that his mother's money should be reduced, so he didn't even ask about me while I stayed with my parents for 2 weeks. I was depressed, I was sad, I was mad. I was preparing myself to leave him. Then he came back and apologized, said he'll change, that he's not going to share anything with his family anymore, that he's going to put me first. I believed him and wanted to give him another chance, although I wish I didn't because things only went downhill from there. His family started getting more involved. They're now pressuring him to make me cook and clean for him. Now, I know a lot of wives do that, but no one is required to do that if that's not what they wanted. He knew before he even proposed to me that I never cooked my entire life. I clean here and there, and our apartment complex has a weekly cleaning service, so I'm not sure what else he wants. Before we got engaged, I told him in all honesty that I'm not going to be cooking or doing his laundry. I'm a doctor, I have my own calls, shifts, work, and life in general. He said he doesn't want me to cook or clean, that we'll figure it out together. But now he's demanding that I basically become his maid. The last straw was when I found out he went on Reddit to like and comment on other girls' naked posts. I called his family crying, thinking that they'll stand by my side. Instead, his father yelled at me. He told me that it's not his problem, that his son is an adult and can do whatever he wanted, that it's probably my fault for always nagging on him, that I'm going to lose my husband and ruin my life, and that it's maybe best if we go through with a divorce because his son is suffering because of me. I was shocked. There I was crying. I had just found out that my husband is commenting on other girls. And then for his father to be blaming me, yelling at me, disrespecting me and my family was a lot to handle. We fought, we made up, the usual. At this point, I'm depressed, I can't stop crying. I want to leave the relationship, but no, that's not the end of it. I find out that he's still stalking his ex of 6 years. He's still not spending time with me. He's still not sharing any secrets. The sex life is almost always initiated by me. I confront him about stalking his ex, he denies it, lies again. He doesn't know I have proof. He cried, we fought, we made up. I am tired of this relationship. I'm at a point where my mental health is getting affected, my work is getting affected. I'm crying all the time, I'm depressed. I want to leave, but I'm still holding on to the hope that he might change and go back to how he was before. I'm scared and I feel lonely. I come from a culture where it would be difficult for a divorced girl to date and marry someone else. Once divorced, not many guys would even look my way. Not that it matters. I know I need to get out of this abusive family, but I don't know how to let myself. I think I've been broken way too many times that it's just difficult to pick myself up and just walk away. I'm scared. Please give me some advice on how to handle it all. Update 1. We are breaking up. No more toxic relationship. Hello everyone. For anyone that already knows my story, welcome back. For people that don't, please go back to my previous post. But to summarize things, I'm the doctor wife, 26, who's married to a doctor husband, 27. We've been having fights nonstop, family-in-law getting involved and yelling at me, him telling them everything, left me during my miscarriage, cheating, lying, no respect, nothing at all. He just wants me to be cooking for him and I was scared to leave because 1, I loved him and 2, the culture. There is a huge update. I've listened to you all about how toxic my relationship is and how I need to find my self-worth and to just run. I do honestly love him so much because prior to marriage and even up to the first few months of marriage, things were fine, they were amazing, I'll be honest. But he always promised to change. Well, he never changed except maybe to the worse, but that empty promise kept me going. I decided to talk to him one last chance to see if there's anything we could do to fix things. It was the last hope. I know. Dumb me, what was I thinking? He'll never change, but I really was holding on to the hope that maybe things can get fixed, that maybe he loves me enough to fight for us. Well, many of you would be happy to hear it, but we're breaking up. Despite me wanting to give this one last try, I approached him today, told him that there's so much going on, he's been treating me really badly, but that I love him and if he really wants this to work, that we'll find a way to fix things, but he'll have to really work hard on it. And his response, that he wants to consider divorce, that he'll never change and neither will I, that he found the post on Reddit somehow and read what I've shared to everyone on here and how betrayed he felt that I mentioned to complete strangers about our problems. He's mad that everyone is against him and his family. He's fuming and even asked me, how could you let them talk badly about me and my family? As if I've pointed a gun to each person's head to make the comments that they did. So he's moving out of our place while he thought about divorce and asked me to do the same. I didn't respond to him. I just told my parents about what happened and they jumped into protection mode. They're now on board with divorce 100%, even if you were to turn back and apologize. We drove to my apartment, packed everything into my dad's car, and off we went to my parents' house. You know what's funny though? When he read my post, he didn't even realize what he's done wrong. When he saw everyone commenting about how bad of a husband he is or how bad his family is, he didn't think once to doubt himself or his family. Simply, he got angry that now strangers know of our problems and that everyone's been supporting me to get a divorce. The irony though, he's been the one telling his family and friends about our problems and everything to do with us/me. But when I post about our problems to complete strangers that don't know him or I and never will, he gets mad. I mean, I get it, I may be in the wrong for posting about our problems. I don't mind admitting when I'm wrong. But he's done far worse things such as telling everyone we know about our problems to begin with. Guess he got a little taste of his own medicine and he really does not like it. Another thing, he was so willing to just drop me and walk away because I'm not cooking for him and B, I'm constantly nagging him to change and C, that I posted our problems for people who don't know us to see. But I couldn't walk away despite the cheating, lies, disrespect, etc. That's a hard slap in the face and a good wake-up call. Am I that petty and weak to allow him to walk all over me but still be with him because I love him? But then with him, he's been waiting for any small excuse to just end things. It really is for the best. I've packed, I'm out, I'm completely done with him now. Just as he is done with me and even more, he probably wants. But even if he asked for me back, it's a hard no for me. I didn't know my self-worth all of this time, but I am learning myself, self-worth now. I deserve better and I may be sad and it'll be difficult for a while, but I'll be happier without him in the long run. No more abuse. I should be free now and I know I need to seek therapy. I will. I've been in too deep with this toxic relationship that I lost my self-worth, self-love, and self-care. A part of me didn't want to walk away because I thought I couldn't find better because he fed me those lies. I was once this strong, independent woman and he stripped me out of this role. However, I'll find myself again, I'll love myself again, and I'll focus on my life and work from now on. I may never find anyone to fall in love with again, especially because of my culture, but at least I'll have myself, my family, and my pride, and I'll never give up hope on finding someone who will treat me better. Thank you everyone for supporting me and for anyone that's going through a similar situation. I hear you. I know what it's like. Now that I'm at the end of it, I know how it feels like to think you deserve what's happening to you, to think that you'll never find anyone. It's difficult to walk away from a whole marriage with someone you love despite it being really toxic and abusive. But I'm going through it and hopefully we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel and so will you. It's difficult to think that abuse is abuse when it's been ongoing for a long time and you start getting used to it, but I hope no one ever allows anyone to do this to them. It's not okay. Much love to everyone. Please reach out if you just want to make friends. I would really love to get my mind off things for a while. Thank you again, everyone. Update 2. Toxic marriage ending with lawsuit, husband and possibly his family, and on possibly poisoning me to miscarry. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if you remember me. I posted a few months ago about my toxic relationship. Just for a summary for any of you who can't remember, and you probably don't, it has been a while. I'm a doctor married to another doctor. We were in a really toxic relationship where my husband lied, cheated on me, caused emotional distress to the point I miscarried, treated me like gaslit me, etc. And I still stayed because I was still in love with him and so attached to the hope that maybe one day we will go back to how things were in the beginning. Of course, we separated after that. We didn't even last a year of marriage. It has been 3.5 months since we separated, but we are still legally married. Since detaching from the whole situation, I realized how much danger I was in while I was with him. Long story short, since separating, I'm beginning to put the pieces together. I don't have proof of anything, but just really big chunks of coincidences that happened during our relationship that leaves me with a question mark now. I was too blinded to see it then, but going through our text messages and old convos in my head, I'm starting to connect the dots. He knew I came from a somewhat wealthy family. He probably saw that as a target. He tried to get me to give him money for his businesses and for our future house that he wanted to be under his name only, to which I obviously refused to do. I didn't mind helping him out if he was in trouble, but I'm not going to take a $300,000 loan for him just for the house to be under his name. He tried several times to trick me, told me he'd have to sell his car, that his family were in trouble and they could lose their house, etc., to get money out of me while we were married. As I mentioned before, things got worse when I got pregnant. I don't think he really wanted the baby. He started abusing me mentally. He'd never spend time with me. Our sex life was really bad. He didn't find me attractive anymore and made sure to make it known to me. But strangely enough, he would wake up earlier than me, make me breakfast, and made sure that I ate it. I was really confused at that point as to why he specifically focused on making me breakfast while I was still sleeping. At first, I thought it was a really cute gesture that showed that he cared. But what kept me confused is that he didn't care if I ate it all after that. He didn't care if I had lunch or dinner, didn't care if I slept or not. He literally only cared about that act of making my breakfast. I had a first doctor's appointment as soon as I learned I was pregnant. I was only 4 weeks, 1 day pregnant, and all my blood investigations were normal. He didn't know I was pregnant. Then I wanted to tell him after I confirmed my pregnancy with the doctor. Once I told him is when he started making me breakfast. 2 weeks later, I went to the doctor again for another issue and another blood test was done. This time, my liver function test was trending up. It was strange, but we didn't think much of it and the doctor suggested I repeat it again in 2 weeks. 2 weeks go by and the liver function tests are going up even more. It was really strange. A few days after the doctor's appointment, I started bleeding. I had a threatened miscarriage, meaning that the baby's heartbeats were there, he was doing well, but I had minimal bleeding. I was in and out of the hospital during that time. He was getting really frustrated, angry, sad over the whole situation. I thought he was stressed about possibly losing the baby. Now I'm not so sure. Anyway, I miscarried at around week 9. He didn't care. I grieved alone, but I also didn't think it was a red flag. After that, he told me we should stop trying for a while. What's strange is that every time we had a pregnancy scare, he would do the same exact thing in the morning, get up early, make me breakfast, make sure I ate it. At the same time, I was going to my doctor's appointment to follow the liver function tests. It went down after I miscarried and normalized. Then when we had that pregnancy scare, my liver function tests went up again that same week. I discussed with him possibly trying again for a baby. We got in a fight, but he finally agreed that we should try. We try, and then from that day onwards, he said it again with making me breakfast. Up to that point, it never even crossed my mind that he could be putting something in my food. That same month, my function tests were the highest they have been. Then once I finally packed everything and moved out, the liver function tests have normalized and they have been normal ever since. Is this a coincidence? Maybe. Could it possibly be stress-induced transglutaminase? Well, there's not much literature on that and I highly doubt it because there's no medical evidence that stress can affect the liver, but again, nothing's impossible. My biggest fear, however, is that he could have been putting something in that breakfast that I was eating. Am I crazy for even thinking that way? Maybe I'm overthinking, but again, we are talking about the man who tried to manipulate me into giving him all my money and taking a loan for him, the same man who did a big medical mistake for a patient on purpose because he didn't feel like operating on him, the same man who tricks people into doing business with him. I honestly never for a second doubted that he would do anything like that to me while I was living with him, but I was so blind-minded. Could it be that I am seeing things more clearly now? Or is my inner thought process trying to find a coping mechanism through doubting that he could possibly be poisoning me and my unborn child so he could get rid of him/her? We are going through a really ugly divorce battle right now. We are not in contact with each other. But our lawyers are, and it has been a war. We couldn't settle because he asked for everything, literally, and threatened to go to court. So we are going to court. It scares me how confident he is that he will be leaving court with more money than we tried to settle for, honestly. But I cannot even think of anything wrong that I have done that I was stupid enough to text him during arguments which could possibly be used against me, whereas he tried his best to never leave evidence of anything from day one. My mind's all over the place. I'm venting. I'm seeing what other people think of this situation. I'm so glad I'm out of that apartment, but I really just want my freedom back of being a single woman again, and I'm willing to pay for it, just not with everything that he asked for, especially when he's the one who lied, cheated, manipulated me, and mistreated me, and now possibly was the direct cause to the death of my unborn child. Please help me make sense of the whole situation. Thank you. Update 3. I got a divorce, no more toxic family, no more toxic husband. Hi. I highly suggest that you go over my previous posts for updates. At this point, I've been updating you guys throughout my journey to free myself from that toxic family. It all began with a simple post on here of my relationship with him and his family, and wow, I got to say that I got more support on here than anywhere else, including my family and friends. I was so down, lost, confused, scared to walk away, but you guys encouraged me too, and I am so glad you all did, so thank you for that. Before I get into the update, I will leave a little summary of the previous posts. I was married to my now ex-husband for less than 1 year. We met in medical school and got married soon after graduation. We're both doctors. He tricked me into thinking that he cared and loved me, but I realized soon after I married him that all he cared about was my family's money. Yeah, I come from a somewhat well-off family. He tried to get me to lend him money, take loans for him, etc., just trying to basically milk me off money for absolutely no reason. He's a doctor and has a side business and makes a ton of money, but he's so into money that he would do anything for it, as I noticed later on in our marriage. He was lying, manipulative, cheated, gaslit me, victim blamed me, etc. His family, on the other hand, were trying to pull me away from my family, disrespected me, mistreated me, etc. And he allowed for all of that to happen. His mom was an absolute nightmare to live with. She wanted to stay as the main woman in his life. He buys her flowers and showers her with gifts, but wouldn't get me anything if I asked for it. Last post I made was about the possibility of him poisoning me to get me to miscarry, to which I obviously miscarried. Anyhow, into the good news, I'm finally divorced. We got to settle with him, and I'm surprised that all it took for us to settle was me threatening him that I will get my nail/hair tested for any possible toxins that could have caused my miscarriage, like some of you suggested in the comments. He was so worried to the point that he agreed to settle right away. His only condition was that I drop the lawsuit against him and never file any other lawsuits against him. Fishy, I know. A lot of you guys would jump to tell me not to sign the agreement to end the divorce and to go get tested and take it to court, etc. But this could take years, and I cannot prove that he could have poisoned me. Even if I had a toxicology report that there was something in my system, there is no direct link to him. I consulted with my lawyer, and my lawyer told me that she is willing to do whatever I chose to do. I honestly just wanted to settle and close the chapter, especially since he in turn signed not to get any money from me, and instead I was getting money from him. I honestly couldn't care less about the money, and I am thinking of donating it all to domestic violence survivors and shelters, etc. Basically women that were in the same spot as me but couldn't be lucky enough to leave before it's too late. I also know that his one true love is money, so it was really hitting him hard knowing that he'll have to pay me. We both signed the divorce papers, and I feel like a weight has been lifted off me. I do not want to be associated with him. I do not want to see him. I do not want to even remember the bad about him because I want to heal and move on. Yes, I'm dropping a lawsuit that I could have probably won and got justice for, but I chose what will be best for me now and for the long run. I can finally breathe. I feel a lot better. I'm a lot happier, even though it hasn't been 24 hours yet since we signed the papers. Still, I am glad to get rid of him. I believe karma will get him sooner or later for mistreating me and for being a cause of my miscarriage, whether that's directly through poisoning me or from putting me through hell living with him. I get to sleep tonight feeling a lot better that I got rid of him. Also, I was afraid of him finding this post, but I'm not afraid anymore. Actually, I hope that if he comes across it, he can read my post and let it all sink in. The very first post I made about him, which was anonymous a long time ago and on another website, he was furious that people were attacking him and his mother, and he couldn't get over it ever. Felt like his forehead vein was going to pop. He couldn't take it that other people are against him and his mother. He tried to blame me for allowing other people to talk about him and his mother, but in reality, they were commenting on his and his mom's behavior. So really, I hope he finds my previous posts and can read it all, though I wish I could record his reaction and show it to you all. I bet it would go viral, lol. Jokes aside, thank you all for supporting me through it. I am finally closing that chapter, and with that, this is most likely my last update on here. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I found out that my best friend and my girlfriend used to be FWB. We have been dating for 6 months and I really like her, but now I feel disgusted. Before meeting my current girlfriend, I had been single for a long while. I had several really rough relationships where we just didn't work, and it was sad. I had been on the dating apps and it was draining my will to date, just horrible experiences, and I felt like I was just making myself depressed. My best friend said he knew this girl who felt the same way about online dating, had some really bad experiences, and was perfect for me. We hit it off almost right away. Our first day was amazing. Our second date was amazing. We went from strangers to seeing each other twice a week. She asked to put off the physical part of our relationship, and no joke, for 2 months we didn't have sex. We didn't have sex until we went away for the first time. We were in a hotel room and it was so awkward. Never have sex for the first time when you were also staying at a hotel together for the first time. We got into a groove, and I think we both say that we have a great sex life. It's been 6 months. Things are going great. We had our first mini vacation together, and not long ago she told me she loved me, and I quickly followed. Cut to Sunday, and my friends and I are talking. My best friend is busting the chops of another friend. It was in good fun, but he made a joke that our other friend took a little too seriously. So, in retribution, he turned to me and told me that my best friend, The guy who introduced me to the girl I am in love with was not only her FWB, but they had one last sexual encounter between our first and second date. I nearly threw up. I know she had a FWB situation, and after our second date, she told me she wanted to hold off on the physical, but that she was done with the FWB and wanted to know if I would do the same, be exclusive. I didn't have a FWB situation. I wasn't seeing anyone else, and so I was cool with it. I wasn't super excited that she was with a different guy, but it was in the past. She never brought it up again, and I was happy to never think about it again until my buddy dropped that nuclear bomb. My friend could only mutter, "Dude," and got angry for being outed. He immediately texted my GF, who blew up my phone. My best friend's thoughts on that subject are get over it. He was angry that our buddy outed him, but felt that it was funnier more than anything and tried to joke we could share notes. I love my friend, but he's gross. He has a natural charm and can get with women and somehow convinces them to do gross things. He will share bits and pieces of his escapades, and I'm now convinced some things he shared must have been with my GF. He's got a huge dong, which is another blow given I'm average. I think on one hand, he's fun and charming, but he'll openly admit that he likes his role as FWB and isn't looking for anything serious. So he's not too concerned with her pleasure or making her feel valued. On the other, he's into some weird things. I haven't seen my GF this week as we were both busy. She knows I learned about the background. She sent a long text on Sunday, and it's basically, "Yeah, he and I banged. I'm with you now, get over it. I'll see you Friday." I'm really kind of grossed out. The friend who outed the situation told me that I shouldn't get too upset, and another friend said it all had racial undertones. I feel really gross about it. My friend would occasionally mention things he did, and now I can't stop picturing it being my GF. Some dudes might get off on that, others might be totally cool with it. I feel super awkward, inadequate, and gross. TLDR. Best friend set me up with a great girl. We fell in love. Never mentioned that he had been her FWB for months before we got together, and they had one final night together between our first and second dates. Now it came out, and suddenly everyone's telling me to just forget it and move on, and there are racial undertones. I feel grossed out by all of it. I feel crazy since no one wants to talk about this. Now for some comments where Opie replied. Comment 1. If you had known about them being FWB before your first date, would you still have gone on the date? If the answer is no, then I think you have your answer. At the end of the day, everyone involved lied to you and seemed to have no remorse about that and were committed to continue lying until they got out. If further setting your friend up on a date, then banging the girl afterwards seems like a pretty shitty thing to do. Opie. No, I probably would have respectfully declined. Comment 2. I was expecting more apologies and shame from your GF. She told you to get over this thing they purposefully hid from you. They broke your trust and grossed you out, and now she is making you feel bad for it. Is that correct? It is a gross thing, and if she actually cared about how you feel, maybe there'd be a way to get past it, but she doesn't care, so these thoughts are going to stay in your head if you stay together. I know being alone sucks, but she proves you can find and attract people. Dump her so you don't feel like the pity BF. Then sit your friend down and tell him that you feel grossed out. HW did that, cut him out if you need to, or keep him if he seems to understand. Opie. She sent a series of long texts basically saying she was sorry and explained herself and what she had done, and then explained the situation and tried to reassure me. I didn't respond, and within 5 to 6 minutes she confirmed we are doing something Friday and then said we'll get past this. Comment 3. Look forward, not backwards. After that, I made perfunctory conversation, but she could tell I was annoyed, angry, and she said the above, basically look forward, not backward. Comment 4. What are the racial undertones? Opie. He's not white. I am white. Comment 5. Seriously, vaginas don't wear out with use. You know she has had other partners before you, and presumably she wasn't your first either. Who she did before you and her were a thing shouldn't matter to you in the slightest now that you two are together. If it does, you deserve to lose her to someone who is ready to be in a healthy adult relationship. Opie, yeah, I get the science behind vaginas not wearing out. It's not her being worn, it's that she was with my best friend, a person whom I've known intimately for years. I know his proclivities. I know the kind of weird he did, And it's not like it's someone in the past she won't interact with again or have less interaction with. He's my best friend. I have to face that every time I see them. Comment 6. This makes me think that you don't really care that they were together, but that you feel like you can't ever measure up to your friend. You said she cut things off with him after the first date. That means she liked you enough after spending one day with you that she cut him off. She also has been with you since. This sounds like you already passed her bar for measurement. At this point, you have got to decide if you want to work through this or not. She definitely shouldn't have hit it, and neither should your friend, but you can't change the past. You can only decide how you're going to move forward. Opie, what they did together was no doubt gross. I have no illusions, and his grossness is a fact of life. Would I prefer not to tread where he's been? Yeah. Do I feel like I can't measure up in a very tangible way? I can't. Update August 14th, 2022. Thanks for everyone's advice. Definitely didn't break up. I couldn't go through with breaking it off. I read all the comments and had about 50 arguments with her in my head where I played both sides. Then I got ready to end it and dump her. But Wednesday she was informed that there had been a horrible tragedy that rocked her whole family, and she was just beside herself. She was so upset that I had to call out of work at the end of the week to go be with her. She begged me not to leave, so I told her I would stay. I work in a field where I'm exposed to these kinds of issues on the regular and was able to help her family navigate some common issues and help explain what happened. Her family is really not in a place to do anything right now, so I'm going to spend the rest of the weekend here as no one is eating or thinking clearly, and so they need some people who can help relieve some pressure. I had to call my friend because I didn't have some things I needed, so he went to my place, got everything, drove the 2 hours to bring it, and then offered to cover my shift on Monday so I can stay a bit longer. That's the kind of thing I meant when I said he was a good person. He'd drive 4 hours round trip and cover for you without expecting anything in return. Last night, GF was going to bring up the issue between us, but instead of having a difficult conversation in the midst of these circumstances, I asked that we just drop it. She wanted clarity, and I asked that we ignore it and move on, act like I never found out. She agreed to that. She's been in need of a lot of emotional support, and she has been really struggling, but throughout everything, she's taken time to tell me how much she loves, appreciates, and cares for me and has thanked me repeatedly for helping out. I was helping her mom clean up from a meal, and she thanked me for all the help and told me some things my GF confided in her. It was very sweet, and apropos of nothing, her family has been incredibly welcoming and kind despite the circumstances and the fact that I only met them twice before all of this. It's a little weird to go from being at dinner at a restaurant and a family birthday to sleeping in their daughter's room and helping them understand complex issues altogether. It's really weird, and our issues feel a million miles away. I feel awkward about having considered breaking up with her. I had gone over it a million times in my head. I'm not sure how long she'll need me here for or how long she intends to stay, so I guess I'm sleeping on her floor for a while yet. Does it suddenly not bother me? Still bothers me. Some people said that their behavior was inexcusable, and others said I was a dirtbag for bringing it up. I still feel like they lied to me. They knowingly didn't disclose what their relationship was. It had been sexual, and they said they were just distant acquaintances. Neither ever mentioned the entire time we were dating in the early phase that they had been going at it. Moreover, we had spent a lot of time together as a group, and they pretended to just be acquaintances. That feels really shitty to me, really, really shitty. I still feel weird about being with someone my friend was with. I feel weird that we both know her in that way. I feel weird that her past is a constant reminder when we're together. When my friend came with my stuff, they interacted for a brief moment and made a feeble attempt at a lighthearted joke about it. It was awkward. I get that on the whole they are entirely wrong for each other and were just mutually bored. She wanted a relationship and was with him until the right one came along. Unfortunately for me, the right one was me, and she was with my friend. I still find it gross, but on the whole, I think I can get past the gross. I can get past the weird awkwardness. I have asked that this info never ever be shared with anyone who may not know. I have asked that the subject not be brought up again, and over text, I asked my friend why he thought we'd hit it off knowing their history. He wasn't apologetic per se, more of a I told you so kind of thing, but did explain his rationale. Now I'm annoyed at my friend and annoyed at my GF, but she needs support, and so I need to put all the emotions away. I feel gross and unhappy in some ways, but in others, I realize that she and I have a great thing. We share a lot of goals and are aligned on so many things. I know she loves me and I her. I'll get over the dick size differential eventually, and hopefully, she's not secretly harboring resentment that I'm not hung like a Clydesdale. So, long way of saying nothing changed. Proceeding as if I never found out and pushing my emotions down. Best way to operate for me. TLDR, I was gonna dump her. I doubt I could have gone through with it, but she suffered a horrific family tragedy, and I am supporting her. She confided in me how she feels about me, and it's clear she needs me right now, so I am pretending I never found out, and she has agreed to act like I never found out. I'll work through my problems over time and we'll just stop talking about it and hopefully time makes it better. Now for some comments where Opie has replied. Comment 1. It sounds like the lying bothers you. Don't let it fester too long. Either hash it out with both of them when the timing is better or move on. Opie. It does bother me, but I'm definitely trying not to let it fester right now. There's no way she has any emotional fortitude, and frankly, I'd rather just let it slide into the past and put it out of my mind. Comment 2. You know you still need to talk to her and your friend about it. Otherwise, you'll bottle all your feelings and end up resenting them, or it will come up when you are upset about something else. Opie. Definitely, but I need a bit more time. I'll be more collected and cogent. Comment 3. Staying because of trauma is not a good thing. You can support her and be her friend, but it sounds like you are not going to get over that dirty feeling, and going forward, it will resurface. Advice is to get her through this in a platonic way and then take a break. Are you both really what you want? If so, start over and rebuild, but do it on your own terms with complete transparency. Opie. Staying only because of the trauma would be a mistake, but without the trauma, I'm not sure I would have dumped her. It's really easy to say, yeah, dump her when I'm shaving or in the car driving. It's another when you're face to face with someone, and you remember all of the reasons why you liked and loved them in the first place. Is it worth it to throw everything away? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. As for now, this is where the story ends as there has not been any recent updates. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Wife cheated, got pregnant by AP and had an abortion. Now she demands I give her a baby or she'll leave me. I want to keep our family with 2 kids together, but I'm struggling. Wife cheated, got pregnant. We have 2 kids already. I need some advice. What would you do? Have you been in a situation like this? I don't even know what I'm looking for in posting this, but Reddit is a place I go to find nuggets of great advice, so I'm looking for that on this post. Just some human-to-human honesty. It's a long one, a movie at this point. I, 31M, have been together with my wife, 34F, for 9 years, married for 4. We have 2 children, 7 years and 11 years. I adopted our oldest around 4 years ago as well, but raised and was a part of his life since he was 1.5 years. All the puke, stepping in Legos, riding bikes. That's my boy, essentially. Last year, January, my wife started a part-time serving job at night and started going out with her coworkers at the local bars and their houses 1 to 3 times a week after work. Sometimes for an hour or 2 after closing time, sometimes until 3 a.m. She also had another part-time job during the day for 4 to 5 hours. I worked a 50-hour work week at a remote work-from-home job. Since my job was much more flexible, I took the kids to and from school, helped with homework and class projects. I carried most of the slack on their sports or doctor's appointments as I had more flexibility, but we both shared these 2 tasks. I also worked on my side business at night after bedtimes that I built from the ground up. I'm proud of it, and it's definitely my passion and dream. During late spring/early summer, my wife started working more at the night serving job and less at the part-time day job, which meant she was also frequenting the bars and going out with her coworkers more. I voiced my concern quite a bit, but always was met with, the kids are already asleep, I'm just going out with my coworkers. I would bring up activities we could do, games, painting, hanging out, things you would want to do with your wife. It was more convenient to just hang with the people she was already with. Fast forward a few months towards the end of the summer, more late nights, new friends I've never met, schedule changes. My wife comes to me with, hey, I'm developing a schoolgirl crush with a coworker. I feel silly about it. There's nothing to worry about. I just wanted to let you know and make you aware. We can call the coworker Fred now. Feeling secure in my marriage, love of my life for 8 years, mother of my children. Been through a third of my life with her. Know her so much, I say something along the lines of, thank you for coming to me, the honesty is appreciated. You work with a guy, we are married, we've been together for 8 years, I trust you in our relationship, and it would make sense that eventually someone would get a feeling like this. We are only human. Like, that's pretty dumb. But no biggie, thanks for the honesty. I approached it with compassion and probably a chunk of naivety at this point. I told her that it was dumb, but it's all okay, and I trust her. You were just coworkers, and even joked and said, go get coffee with the guy, you work with him a lot anyway. Maybe she would see the schoolgirl crush is dumb and shake it off. Say to herself, what am I doing? My husband is my man, sort of thing. Boy, was I wrong. Fast forward a month or so, same going out to the bars behaviors. I'm dropping off and picking up the kids, I'm cooking dinners, doing bedtimes alone. I get let go from my day job, and it was a unique job that allowed me freedom to take care of the kids, take time off, and it paid fairly well for my profession. I decided to put more effort into my business and went full-time into it. I was making about the same amount at my side business as my old day job at this point, even more by double some months too. I was ecstatic but working hard day and night and staying focused to keep the bills paid. Everything has been split 60/40ths, me paying a bit more most of our relationship. We were 20-year-olds having kids. I wasn't in a position to pay for a family of 4 off of 1 or 2 jobs with my skill set. She very desperately wanted me to pay for everything so she could stay home, and still does. It's just really hard to make enough for her to stay home in this economy and our skill sets. I only can work 2 jobs realistically. 1 month she was going to visit her friend on the West Coast for a week. Everything was normal and seemed fine, and when she came back from the trip we went to a concert, and I felt something was a little off because I saw she was texting one of her old exes again. She hasn't talked to this guy for years, and it was becoming this constant thing I was noticing. I confronted her about it, and she said she had met him on the West Coast trip in passing at a concert her and her friends went to. So they reconnected and started talking again. At this point, I was definitely concerned and was questioning how this trip really went. I never went through her phone our entire relationship, but I had a chance to one day, and I had this gut feeling. I looked through her phone and found out she cheated on me with one of her girlfriend's friend. Some dude she just met for a day or 2 and slept with him. I see texts back and forth from him and her that were talking about what they did and how great it was, not a care in the world, and she was loving the praise and attention from this guy. I also find a text thread with her planning a hotel night with Fred that same week she came back from that trip. If not one hookup was enough, she wanted to a ruse that she was going to give me about being at her girlfriend's house party. Too drunk to drive home, so she had to stay the night. There was also more texts between other dudes about wanting to hang out or meet up for drinks, etc. Sure. Let's make a date. I'll check if my babysitter is free. Apparently, I'm the babysitter at this point. I felt struck. Hit with a train, spikes thrown at my body, dragged through hot lava. Absolutely enraged. I couldn't process it. I was in utter disbelief. If you are wondering, our sex life was damn amazing in the beginning. We were an amazing pair sexually, but the last 3 years of the relationship it was fairly dead. I would have to beg for sex and would be lucky to get 1 to 2 times a month. I married a girl with a matching sex drive to me, which is fairly high, but hers decreased a bunch after kids too, and I was the only one initiating and trying to be sexual and show that I wanted her in that way. When I saw her next, I confronted her. She seemed shocked I found out and was pissed I went through her phone. Later find out there was more I missed too in Snapchat. She didn't cry right away or act how I would expect. She didn't throw her at me crying. She was just looking sad and shocked. It took a few days for me to really see her breakdown and see that she probably effed up the marriage forever. I tried to sort through all the pain, hurt, betrayal, confusion, point of origin, hatred, love, depth, you name it. It was a rocky feeling. Weeks mentally, the depression started kicking in, but that's my wife, and in the end, I tried my absolute best to see the good in her and just try to make it work for the sake of our kids, the home, the marriage. I tried to be the better man. I told her, don't stay at your friends. Let's try and work this out. I hate you because of the betrayal, but I love you because everything else we've been through. We even slept in the same bed that night too. Is this trauma bond? The next part happens within a few weeks from what I found out in July to August. All hell broke loose. I will take some blame here on this next section because my mental psyche was completely compromised, and I was not operating as a functional human mentally at this point. I was broken, or at least that's how it feels. We decided to do an open relationship test run. Stupid move. It was a shiny new thing that sounded good on paper. We made rules and an agreement, and she went on a date with Fred. I tried to be mostly supportive and open to the initial idea. Who knows, might work out for both of us. At this point, she comes home and tells me about the night. It was a simple date with him, her, and a group of friends, but I realized right there, I'm never going to have time to chase another girl and raise kids and build my business. I was blinded by the idea, but it made no sense in hindsight, but it would work great for her and her schedule. At this point, I'm drowning for something to make sense. I'm flopping around like a fish trying to breathe and figure everything out. One night, I asked her to hang with me besides watch TV, something to the effect of helping me do a menial task that would take an hour or so. No, she wasn't into it and would rather watch TV. I snapped. I said, sure, whatever. I felt the care and love disappear. I felt the depression and numbness overcome me. It felt like when Anakin turned into Darth Vader. I felt vengeful. I felt hatred. I felt the poison of revenge just totally engulfed me. I felt depressed. I felt like I wasted my life away for someone. Adopted her son. Worked 2 jobs. How could she do something like this to me? I worked 2 jobs for 5 years and tried my best to provide as a young father of 2. I gave everything, my all. I bled for this family day in and day out and adopted her son. I signed papers to always be responsible for another man's child and to love him forever. But the poison just hit me. How can she do that to me? And how can I handle this? Life didn't seem real anymore. I hopped on Tinder and found the easiest girl and planned a date. A hookup if things went okay. I skipped a chunk of the rules and agreement of the open relationship, wasn't honest in what I was doing or my intentions of the night. I meet the Tinder girl at a bar and hit it off a bit, but at this point, I could care less about looks or the conversations or anything. I just was filled by this numbness and worthlessness to feel what my wife did to me, feel how easy she could do it to me. I was numb. I let go. We went to a secluded place and hooked up. Wife had my location on and brought the kids out at 2 a.m. to catch me up in the act. Who brings their kids out at 2 a.m. into unknown situations? Absolutely insanity. She hit me multiple times and tried to beat me. She threw who knows what from her trunk at my head and clocked me pretty good a few times. I didn't touch her or fight back. I was dazed and in shock. My wife makes me drive the girl I met back to her car with my kids and my wife in the back seat. Nice move, let's traumatize the kids, right? She makes me sleep in a hotel for a few nights, throws all my stuff all over the house, threatens to destroy all my business gear, screams, punches, throws everything at me. In my head, I'm thinking, man, what the F was I thinking to do something like that? But I also realized when she cheated on me, I was pissed but calm and reasonable. We slept in the same bed the night I confronted her. I yelled a bit but didn't make her leave the house. I didn't take all her stuff and throw it around. She was showing me that she couldn't handle the same thing she just dealt to me, and she was being so cruel and evil to me. I get back in the house and it's days of violence, me trying to keep the peace and explaining that I'm feeling broken, depressed, and hurt that she would do that to me in the way that she responded when I did the same thing back. No, what I did was worse. I should have been the better man and not cheated back, even though we were open. It was my fault, and I'm the slime of the earth, all things she kept saying to me, making me seem like the scummy villain, a terrible excuse for a husband, an awful human for cheating back on her. All the while, we only got to this place because she cheated on me. She didn't want to see that she made me into the shell of a man, and all of this was happening so fast. What was the rush? Why did all of this fall apart so fast? There was something else that was affecting this rushy open relationship. A few days after this, my wife finds out she's pregnant. We were now in tornado panic mode. Everything is spinning in our world. We find out that she is pregnant with the doctor's visit. Shortly after this, we find out it lines up perfectly to her week trip out west. It was the dude she met and slept with out there. I know this because we didn't have sex the week before after her trip. It's not an excuse for her behavior, but the pregnancy hormones could have been why she was so intense when she caught me, even when we were technically in an open relationship. I just skipped some rules. Hell, she broke the entire marriage vow when she cheated. Even so, she bounced the idea of keeping this guy's baby, and I specifically said to her, "It's your body, you need to make this decision. I don't want to sway you anyway. That is your body, not mine." I made this clear many times. One day, she asked me what I would do if she kept this man's baby, and I responded honestly, "I don't know if I can handle raising another man's baby that you cheated on me with." After a week, she decided to get an abortion. Even at the clinic, I said, "Do you want to go home? You don't have to do this, and it's your body. Seriously, this is an important thing, we can just go home." Yes, she asked me to drive her to the clinic. She was going to Fred drive her. She almost instantly regretted the decision. A day or so later, she wanted to keep that man's baby, and she made me feel like I forced her to choose to abort. August to December were the worst months of my life, worse than watching my mother slowly die of stage 4 cancer. It was a terrible time, constant fights and trauma, and her throwing my stuff outside and begging me to leave, but then telling me to fight for her, going back and forth on what she wanted. She would get physical with me and punch me in the face some days. Men can't report domestic violence, that shows weakness. She would take the kids away for weekends or weeks. She even tried to take them from me on Christmas Eve. She did, but brought them back at night. Utter pain and chaos. Then came the ultimatum. She regretted not keeping the baby and said, "I'm not willing to work on our relationship unless you give me a baby." She wouldn't even entertain the idea of fixing the marriage first unless she was pregnant first. I'm not insane, am I? That's not normal, right? We're not well-off people, lower middle class at best. Always one full-time job and a part-time job or two for me, and a part-time or two for her. We make it each month but have no savings or retirement, etc., etc. I know after all of this, having another child is financially the stupidest thing we could do, and then on top of all this pain and betrayal, the last thing I want is to have a child with the woman who cheated on me. It sounds so selfish and one-sided. Our kids we have now deserve as much care and attention we can give them with the little resources we have. I can't work 90 hours a week and be okay. I know I don't have the mental, emotional, financial, and temporal bandwidth for another child, but I know she wants another to fill the void she is from losing the other, but I feel like that's not my fault or obligation to give her another kid just because she cheated and had one with another dude, and she decided to abort. Now she feels the need to have another. I don't feel like that should fall on me. That's not right to put the entire marriage on a selfish one. After all of this, it's been 6 months since this happened, and we are more amicable and somewhat peaceful when conversing now. Both hurt, still in pain, but living under the same roof. I want to be there for my kids every day. That's my number one now. It used to be my wife, the kids, and myself last, but now it's the kids, myself, and my wife last. I want to be there every day for them like I've been the past 10 years. I adopted her son as my own, and she wants to take them away for an at best situation of 50-50 split custody. I love these kids so much, and I know they will be broken without dad. They growing up, sure 50% is better than nothing, but it's tough. Am I crazy for still tossing the idea of just giving in to what my wife wants? Am I insane for still wanting this marriage to work? I think about it and sometimes feel like a weak man who just wants his kids. I want peace, not more headaches. But another baby sounds so intense right now. But we're definitely at the defining fork in the road. There is no more straight path. A decision has to be made. Give her a child and save the marriage for my children, working even more hours to stay afloat, knowing I'm doing it all for my kids and a wife who cheated on me, and I cheated back. Do I just give in and give her her little dream of a baby to keep my family? Or walk away with my peace, knowing that I tried my best to make it work, but knowing life will be 10,000% harder raising 2 kids in separate households? I'll still have to work double hours or find some magic job that can afford 2 kids and a single dad in this economy. I don't have much of a friend network or any family here. I pretty much be on my own. I don't know, Reddit. I'm just a 1 in a billion human being just like you, going through a different experience. I thought I'd share this. Any advice, clarity, perspective, story is appreciated. I have a gut feeling of what I should do and choose myself and my happiness and peace. It's just tough. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Am I wrong for throwing out my dad and brother for saying I'm overreacting to defend my daughter? I, 39F, and my husband, 40M, have 4 kids, but this really only concerns our oldest daughter, Stella, 15. My husband and I want all our kids to have some type of involvement in the community, so twice a month, the oldest 2 serve as ushers with my dad at our local Catholic church. This consists of them, Stella, 15, Owen, 14, holding doors open for people coming to church, passing out the baskets for the offertory, and dismissing pews to get up and in line for communion. My father is also an usher, so they do this with him. This past Saturday was their day to usher. My parents picked up all 4 kids and took them to church and dinner. When they got home, my husband and I were at a Halloween party, but Stella texted to tell me they were home and watching a movie and asked me to send her some pictures of everyone's costumes. The next day, Stella tells me that she doesn't want to usher anymore. She said as she was holding one of the doors open, an old man named Joseph Zeros, who is apparently very active in the church, walked up to her and told her to follow him. He directed her to the main doors of the church to greet people. He held her hand the whole time, asked her how old she was and if she had a boyfriend, told her she is so pretty but she should smile more. Then he demanded that she smile at everyone coming into the church, told her that he would be her boyfriend, and asked her if she loved him. She said she was very uncomfortable but couldn't get anyone's attention to help her. He then tried to make her sit with him during Mass. After Stella told me all of this, I immediately called my mom to ask her what happened because I hadn't heard anything from her, my dad, or Stella about this until right then. She said that Stella did tell my dad that she was uncomfortable, and he told her she didn't have to usher and she could go sit with my mom and her younger siblings for Mass. My mom told me she was not made aware of everything that had happened. All she knew was that Stella was uncomfortable around the man. So did the meat of the story. My brother, 36, came over last night to see my husband for a little bit, and while he and Hubs were in the garage having a drink, my parents dropped by unannounced to bring the kids some candy. I hadn't spoken to my dad since I had learned everything that had happened at church a few days prior, so after greeting my parents, I asked my dad if Joseph serves in an official capacity at church, and my dad said no. I then asked my dad if he was going to talk to the head priest to make him aware of the situation, and he said he only planned to talk to him if Joseph gave him any pushback. I argued that the priest should be made aware because we don't know if this is a pattern of behavior, if he has dementia or some other illness that causes him to not be in complete control of his actions or what. I just wanted the priest to be made aware so he could keep an eye out. My father argued back that Joseph is just a nice old man who got out of line because in this day you can't be nice without it being taken the wrong way. Cue the head explosion. I told him that sweeping this behavior under the rug by just asking this old man for an apology and not saying anything else about it makes it possible for Joseph to behave this way with another girl. My father continued to argue his point and said that if he did what I was asking, the church would just prevent him from doing what he likes to do at church. I then very loudly told my dad that if being an effing creep is what he enjoys doing, then maybe the church should prevent him from doing that and told my parents they needed to leave. As my dad was walking out, he said sarcastically, "I'm sorry, I don't want to crucify the old man. I effing glossed it, y'all." I yelled at my father that I was sorry that he cared more about some old man's feelings than his own granddaughter's. My brother then decided to get in on the show and started saying I was just being vengeful and wanted to vilify the old man and preclude him from a public space and that what happened wasn't that big of a deal. While standing 3 feet from Stella, I was so effing pissed at this point. I was crying and shaking. I told my brother that he likes to act like he's the smartest person in the room, but he's a lazy POS who drowns himself in conspiracy theory because he feels it justifies his laziness. I told him he was a loser and he needed to get out of my house. My dad immediately went into damage control mode and apologized for making me feel like I was making an unreasonable request or like I was personally going after some guy I've never even met. He said he would talk to the priest, and my mom, who was on my side completely, said that they would always do whatever they had to do to keep their grandchildren safe. Couldn't even look at my dad. I just asked them to leave and said goodbye to my mom. I went back out to the garage where my husband was and explained everything that had happened because he was expecting my brother and I to come back out. He wasn't involved in the conversation because initially I was just going to try and get them out of the house as quickly as possible. But then when everything started, I went into fight mode and didn't even think about getting my husband. He is also 100% behind me and feels that my dad and brother are both in the wrong. But he's letting me take the lead on this since it's my family, but will absolutely be there for any other conversations we have on the subject. So, am I asking too much? Is notifying the people in charge about what happened going too far and vilifying this man? I don't think so, but I cannot explain my father and brother's position on this. Update. I have an appointment with the priest tomorrow at 2. I will be going with my father because he was there, and Stella can decide for herself if she'd like to come. I will not force her. Edit. I'd like to address some of the more common comments I'm seeing. Many people have questioned why I waited for my dad to handle this instead of taking the lead and speaking to the head priest myself. I honestly thought I could count on him. I was raped by a boyfriend in high school but never told anyone. I tried to suppress it for as long as I could, but 3 years later I found myself in a bad situation in college, and while I wasn't harmed, it caused everything to come out. My father was beside himself. He wanted to kill the boy and felt so much guilt because he wasn't able to protect me. I honestly believed that the experience he had with me would make him act with much more urgency. Clearly, I was wrong. Regardless of that, I still should have been the one to handle this and shouldn't have waited for my dad. I also know that the Catholic Church has a record when it comes to SA. I love my faith and my religion, but I do have a lot of issues with the church itself. That being said, I've never been given any reason to doubt that my kids would be safe at church with my parents. They have many friends that they go to church with and are involved in youth group. I knew there was going to be some pushback simply because the initial situation happened at a Catholic church. I won't try to change anyone's mind, but I will say that my experience in the church up to this point has always been good, and I have found a lot of comfort in going to Mass, as have my children. I would never knowingly put my children in harm's way. I'll do my best to update you all after the meeting tomorrow afternoon. Thanks for all the love and support. Update November 2nd, 2023. Before I jump into the update, I want to address some of the comments I was seeing. Stella was not alone at church. She was there with her grandparents, just not standing directly next to them the whole time. Joseph approached her after she held the door open for him because he uses a walker and couldn't get the door open himself. When he asked her to follow him to a different door that was just a few feet from where she had been to help pass out brochures for the Knights of Columbus, she thought it was a little weird but thought to herself that he's an old man with a walker and she's in church, what could go wrong? I know the Catholic Church has a record when it comes to SA, but the priest we met with is a good man that I know personally. He is the priest that married my husband and I trust him to do the right thing. I won't try to change anyone's mind about the church. I don't know what your experience has been, but mine and my family's has always been good. Also, Joseph does not work for the church, nor does he have any committee or volunteer organization. He's just a weird old man who goes to church every single day and likes to feel involved. On to the update. When I got to the meeting today, which I recorded on my phone, my father started it by telling Father Thomas, FT for brevity, that at Mass last Saturday, Joseph was a little too friendly and made Stella very uncomfortable. I interjected and said that that is not all that happened. I explained everything that Stella had told me. FT was absolutely appalled. Apparently, there have been issues with him before, but nothing like this. He has tried telling parishioners that if you're not a part of the Knights of Columbus, then you aren't a good enough Catholic. He was told emphatically that he cannot say things like that. He was also asked not to come back to volunteer at the soup kitchen because of how he was bullying the homeless people into becoming Catholic. FT said it is clear to him that Joseph has some psychological problems, but there has never been any complaints about him like this. My father tried to say that at some point in Joseph's life, it may have been normal to speak like that to women. My mother, FT, and I all looked at him and said no, it has never been normal or okay for an old man to speak like that or to behave that way with any woman regardless of the age. FT asked what I was seeking. I told him that I wanted to ensure the safety of all the young women at the parish and ensure that no other girl would be put in the position that Stella was in. I also told him that sometimes elderly people have their driver's licenses taken away, and perhaps he should be barred from volunteering in any capacity at the church from this point on. FT said he would be reaching out to the head of the Safe Environment Program in the diocese to put some new safeguards in place to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. My mother then said that my father would be speaking with Joseph, and I immediately interrupted her to say no, my husband and I will be speaking to Joseph. Many of you pointed out that I shouldn't have waited for my father to address this because she is my daughter, and you were all 100% right. I am not going to leave it to my father to make this man comfortable while telling him you can't talk like that anymore. I gave FT my business card and asked him to update me after he speaks with Joseph and with the Safe Environment head to let me know how they will be addressing this and to set up a meeting with me, my husband, and Joseph. When we left the meeting, I told my parents, specifically my father, that what he did in minimizing the situation is exactly why so many women don't report things like this, and it was nothing short of sexual harassment of a minor. I told my father that he can still think Joseph is a nice old man, but that I would never be able to look at him the same way again, and I don't know if I can trust him with my kids. That was the gut punch he needed because despite this new side of my father I'm seeing, he's always been a wonderful grandfather to all my kids. He owes Stella an apology, but she doesn't want one. She emphatically said she just wants to put this behind her and doesn't want to talk about it anymore. As far as my brother goes, I got a non-apology apology from him via text this morning. It shouldn't go without saying, I'm sorry for getting involved, and I wish I hadn't interjected myself in the situation. It's not my place, and I support whatever you want to do. I haven't responded because I will go off on him again. I think I'm just going to let my husband deal with his ass. Well, that's all I've got, y'all. Once I hear back from FT and have a meeting with Joseph, I'll try to update y'all again. Thanks again for everyone who gave advice on how to help Stella through this and how to handle another situation like this because let's be honest, as she will. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Found flirty texts between my wife and her gynecologist who claimed she had cancer. I faked working late, snuck into his office and caught them in the act, recorded everything. My wife and I have been together for about 11 years. While we did have a bit of a gap, we hit it off well. She was in college and I was interning. We met up working together after she graduated. I asked her to marry me and then of course, even though it had been about 3 years, she said yes. To say it was the best night of my life is an understatement. Truly was. When we married 8 years ago, I thought it would be perfect. We danced, sang, and were merry. She smiled from ear to ear, and that night it felt like the start of our lives. And of course, the start of the hell I was put through. My wife's always had health issues, especially when it comes to reproductive health. At first, it started with some aches and pains, and eventually it turned into major issues with her uterus. Doctors told us that having a kid was out of the question, which was a little disappointing, but I accepted it because I loved her so much. We moved into a new house, a huge stately place with more than enough for us. She got mad at me because she thought I was trying to push the kid thing again, but I insisted that was definitely not the case. I just wanted a life together that we could share and be happy with. My wife and I worked well together, and I was happy to have her. However, this also led to other strange goings-on. The first was that she started spending less time around me. She was out a lot, and I always wondered where she was going. She would come home late, and sometimes when we talked, it felt like there were walls. She insisted that she loved me. I wanted to believe her. She means the world to me, and I want that for both of us. Then came another bomb that was dropped, the cancer scare. My wife started having pains once again. We even got her surgery to help with this, removing part of her reproductive system. However, cysts were found, and she was referred to a specialist to help with these problems. I figured it would be nothing. Maybe she's just having some issues. She started seeing another person, and they claimed it was a possible tumor. Now I'm worried as hell. My wife might have cancer. We've dealt with a couple of serious situations involving her reproductive health, but I never thought it would be cancer. My wife encouraged me to see the specialist. I thought fine, maybe I should. We get in, and my wife starts acting overly friendly and very sweet with him. A complete 180 from the distant woman I've dealt with up to this point. Something seems up, and I can't put my finger on it, but I dismiss those thoughts. Maybe my wife is just being nice to him, but she told me afterward that she'd have a few appointments to treat this and that she'd go alone. At the time, I was working long hours at a desk job. I didn't want to do this, But I said, sure, maybe my wife's treatment will go faster, so she started the treatment. However, I always thought that the hours were strange. She would go in the afternoon and would stay till well after most businesses closed. I asked her about this, and my wife said that he preferred to see her after their patient since the treatment involved medicine and chemotherapy to help with a possible tumor. I thought, sure, maybe that's it. She got the treatment, and for 2 months I did everything I could to help my wife. Even with my desk job, I prepared dinner and cleaned up the whole 9 yards. But my wife still stayed aloof and didn't seem as open towards me as before. This was beginning to get ridiculous. I wasn't exactly sure what was happening, but she shied away from my touches and didn't want anything to do with me at times. 2 months passed. I thought my wife would be all cleared by now, but the doctor insisted that she come in. The treatments continued. Something was up. However, he was seeing my wife during this time, and my wife never had any of the symptoms of chemotherapy. It got weird when I noticed she still had all of her hair. I asked about it, to which she responded that it was a new type of treatment and that she was fortunate to try it. I dismissed this once more. Clearly, my wife didn't want to get into it. I, of course, wished I could shake these thoughts. However, they continued bothering me, eating away like a festering wound. I wanted to believe that it was nothing but just my imagination. That was until I saw the texts. My wife asked me to grab something in the bedroom for her. I walked in and her phone buzzed. Curiosity got the better of me, much to my dismay, and I looked down at it. It was the gynecologist, Dr. Roth. However, the messages were not appropriate for the business he was in, especially with my wife. The flirty text sat there mocking me. She told me how he would keep this up to keep seeing her. She mentioned that I was a fool and that I didn't catch on to their affair. Anger boiled within. I didn't want to bring it up just yet. I loved my wife, and if I asked her now, she might try to refute it. I knew the best way to fix this cheating mess would be to catch them in the act, which is exactly what I did. I set it up so that I would be home late the next time she had an appointment. I told my wife this, and her eyes lit up, which disgusted me. She wasn't even trying to hide it. She wanted me to catch them in the act. It made the pain of this even harder. On the day of, I drove over to the gynecologist's office. There was but one light on, and I knew it was them. I stepped inside. The door was open. I heard sounds. I walked closer, and that's when I heard it. Your husband fell for the cancer scare. My wife gloated, saying that he did. She mentioned he was gullible and so easy to use for whatever perverse reason she could. I wanted to throw up. I held on to the doorknob, listening to their conversation. I waited until I heard sounds, and that's when I made my move. I opened the door, catching her gynecologist between her legs, and my wife looked so happy. Anger boiled within me as I called them out. My wife stared in shock, but she never denied it. In fact, she seemed to think she did nothing wrong. I loved you. I thought you felt the same way. That's when my wife dropped the ball. She's hated me for a long time. Dr. Roth treated her like the woman she wanted to be, and since then, they've been planning a future together. I saw red. In fact, I don't think red is the only color I saw. I wanted to lash out, to punch him, but I didn't. Instead, I asked him why he did this. He said it wouldn't affect his practice and that what people don't know won't hurt them. That's when I pulled it out, the recorder I had. I set it up initially to catch anything, especially if my wife denied it. I told him that he would pay and he'd regret what he'd done. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.